"Happy New Year, Daddy," said the little beggar to the Sterile Millionaire as she handed him an envelope. But when he opened it and saw what was inside, his heart broke. The bitter winter wind howled through the empty streets of New York City, carrying with it the faint echoes of long-forgotten dreams. Amidst the swirling snowflakes and the indifferent skyscrapers, a small figure huddled in the shadows of an alleyway, clutching a worn blue rosary, as if it were the last lifeline to a world that had long since turned its back. Lily, just 7 years old, had known the harsh realities of life on the streets for what felt like an eternity. Her small hands, calloused and chapped from the cold, wrapped tightly around the rosary, her most prized possession and her only connection to a past that seemed more like a distant dream with each passing day. As she nestled deeper into her makeshift shelter of cardboard boxes and discarded newspapers, Lily closed her eyes and let her mind wander to the last memory she had of her mother. The hospital room had been cold and sterile, much like the world Lily now inhabited, but her mother's warm smile had filled the space with a light that seemed to push back the encroaching darkness. "Lily, my sweet girl," her mother had whispered, her voice weak but filled with love. "I want you to have this." She had pressed the blue rosary into Lily's tiny hands, her fingers trembling with the effort. "Whenever you feel scared or alone, hold on to this rosary. It will remind you that I'm always by your side, watching over you." A single tear escaped Lily's tightly shut eyes as she remembered her mother's final words. She brought the rosary to her lips, kissing it gently as she had done countless times before. "I miss you, Mommy," she whispered into the night, her words carried away by the unforgiving wind. The sound of approaching footsteps jolted Lily from her reverie. She quickly gathered her few belongings, a tattered backpack containing a change of clothes, a half-empty water bottle, and a crumpled photograph, and prepared to run. Life on the streets had taught her to be wary of strangers, especially those who prowled the night. As the footsteps grew louder, Lily's heart raced. She clutched the rosary tightly, drawing strength from its familiar contours. "Please, Mommy," she prayed silently, "keep me safe." The footsteps paused at the entrance to the alley. Lily held her breath, willing herself to become invisible in the shadows. After what felt like an eternity, the stranger moved on, their footsteps fading into the distance. Lily let out a shaky breath, relief washing over her like a warm blanket. She knew she couldn't stay in this spot for long. The city was a dangerous place for a child alone, and she had learned the hard way that staying in one place for too long only invited trouble. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Lily emerged from her hiding place. She stretched her small body, wincing at the aches that came from sleeping on the cold, hard ground. Another day of survival lay ahead, and she knew she needed to find food and a safer place to rest. With practiced ease, Lily blended into the early morning crowd of commuters and tourists. She had become adept at making herself invisible, a ghost child haunting the bustling streets of the city. As she walked, her mind drifted to the crumpled photograph tucked safely in her backpack, a treasured find from a pile of discarded belongings she had stumbled upon weeks ago. The photograph showed her mother, younger and full of life, smiling broadly next to a man Lily didn't recognize. She had studied the man's face countless times, memorizing every detail. In her heart, she held on to the hope that this stranger might be her father, someone who could offer her the home and love she so desperately craved. As Lily navigated the crowded sidewalks, her keen eyes scanned for opportunities. A half-eaten sandwich discarded in a trash can, a dropped coin glinting in the gutter. These were the small windfalls that kept her going from day to day. She had learned to be resourceful, to find sustenance where others saw only waste. The day wore on, and Lily found herself in a part of the city she didn't often frequent. The buildings here were taller, shinier, and the people dressed in expensive suits and dresses that probably cost more than Lily could imagine. She felt out of place, her ragged clothes and dirty face a stark contrast to the polished world around her. As she passed by a particularly grand building, something caught her eye. Through the large glass windows of what appeared to be an upscale restaurant, Lily saw a familiar face. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized the man from her photograph, sitting at a table with an elegantly dressed woman. Time seemed to stand still as Lily stared, her mind racing with possibilities. Could this be her chance? The moment she had dreamed of for so long? With trembling hands, she reached into her backpack and pulled out the crumpled photograph, comparing it to the man she saw through the window. There was no doubt. It was him. Taking a deep breath, Lily gathered all her courage. She knew she might never get another opportunity like this. With her heart pounding in her chest and her mother's rosary clutched tightly in her hand, she took a step towards the restaurant's entrance. As she reached for the door, a well-dressed man exited, nearly knocking her over. He looked down at her with disdain, his nose wrinkling at her appearance. "Watch where you're going, street rat," he sneered, pushing past her. Lily stumbled back, momentarily stunned by the man's cruelty. But she wouldn't let this deter her. She had come too far, endured too much, to let one unkind person stand in her way. Squaring her small shoulders, she pushed open the heavy door and stepped into a world she had only ever glimpsed from the outside. The restaurant was a cacophony of clinking glasses, muted conversations, and the soft strains of classical music. The air was heavy with the aroma of expensive perfumes and gourmet dishes. Lily felt overwhelmed, but she forced herself to focus on her goal. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for the man from the photograph. She spotted him at a table near the back of the restaurant, engaged in what appeared to be an intense conversation with the woman. Lily's feet felt like lead as she slowly made her way towards them, her heart thundering in her ears. As she approached the table, she couldn't help but overhear snippets of their conversation. The woman was speaking in a hushed, urgent tone. "Can't keep living like this, Richard. We need to talk about—" Her words were cut short as she suddenly clutched at her throat, her eyes widening in panic. The man, Richard, half rose from his seat, concern etched on his face. "Margaret, what's wrong?" In that moment, as if by some divine intervention, Lily found herself thrust into action. She recognized the signs of a seizure, having cared for her mother during her illness. Without hesitation, she rushed forward, her small voice rising above the din of the restaurant. "Help! She needs help!" The other diners turned to stare as Lily reached the table, her dirty hands already moving to help the woman, Margaret, into a safe position. "Sir," she said to Richard, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "we need to move her to the floor. Can you help me?" Richard, momentarily stunned by the appearance of this street urchin taking charge of the situation, nodded numbly and helped Lily ease Margaret to the ground. As they worked together to ensure Margaret's safety, Lily felt a strange connection to this man she had dreamed about for so long. But before she could say anything, to explain who she was or why she was there, chaos erupted around them. Waiters rushed over, patrons stood from their tables to get a better look, and someone shouted for an ambulance to be called. In the commotion, Lily found herself being pushed away from the scene. A waiter grabbed her arm roughly, his face twisted with suspicion. "What did you do to her?" he demanded, shaking Lily. "Did you poison her food?" Lily's eyes widened in fear and confusion. "No, I was just trying to help," she protested, but her words fell on deaf ears. The waiter, along with several other staff members, began to forcibly remove her from the restaurant. As she was dragged towards the exit, Lily's eyes locked with Richard's for a brief moment. She saw confusion and something else, a flicker of recognition, perhaps, in his gaze. But before she could call out to him, she was thrust out onto the street, the restaurant doors slamming behind her. Lily stumbled on the sidewalk, tears welling in her eyes. She had been so close to finally finding a connection to her past, to possibly finding a home. And now it had all slipped away in a matter of moments. As she regained her balance, Lily realized with horror that her backpack was missing. In the chaos of the restaurant, it must have fallen off. Her few possessions, including the precious photograph, were now lost to her. With a heavy heart and tear-stained cheeks, Lily clutched her mother's rosary and began to walk away from the restaurant. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city streets. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she couldn't stay here. As night fell over the city, Lily found herself wandering aimlessly, her mind replaying the events of the day over and over. She had been so close to changing her life, only to have it all slip through her fingers like sand. The weight of her disappointment threatened to crush her small frame, but she forced herself to keep moving. The city lights blurred through her tears as she walked, each step taking her further from the brief moment of hope she had experienced. But even in her despair, a tiny spark of determination refused to be extinguished. She had found the man from the photograph once. Perhaps she could find him again. With this glimmer of hope to sustain her, Lily continued her solitary journey through the night, the blue rosary her constant companion and her link to a mother's enduring love. The days that followed the incident at the restaurant blurred together for Lily, each one a struggle for survival in the unforgiving urban jungle. The loss of her backpack and the precious photograph it contained weighed heavily on her small shoulders, but the memory of the man's face, Richard she had heard him called, was etched indelibly in her mind. As the bitter December winds whipped through the city streets, Lily found herself huddled in the doorway of an abandoned building, her thin frame shivering despite the layers of newspaper she had wrapped around herself. The blue rosary, her one remaining connection to her past, was clutched tightly in her frostbitten fingers. "Please, Mommy," she whispered, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. "I need a sign, I need to know what to do next." As if in answer to her desperate plea, a commotion down the street caught her attention. A group of people had gathered, their excited chatter carrying on the wind. Curiosity piqued, Lily cautiously approached the crowd, staying on the periphery to avoid drawing unwanted attention. "It's New Year's Eve," she heard someone exclaim. "Time to make our wishes for the coming year." New Year's Eve. The realization hit Lily like a physical blow. She had lost track of time in her daily struggle for survival, but now the significance of the date washed over her. A new year meant new beginnings, new possibilities, and perhaps a chance to change her fate. As the crowd began to disperse, Lily's eyes were drawn to the night sky. Through a break in the towering buildings, she caught sight of a brilliant streak of light, a shooting star. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "When you see a shooting star, make a wish, Lily. The universe is listening." With all the hope and longing in her young heart, Lily closed her eyes and made her wish. "Please," she whispered, "let me find a home. Let me find someone who will love me." When she opened her eyes, the star was gone, but a strange feeling of warmth had settled in her chest. It was as if her mother had wrapped her arms around her, offering comfort and encouragement. Without fully understanding why, Lily felt compelled to follow the path of the shooting star. Her feet moved of their own accord, carrying her through winding streets and past glittering storefronts, decked out for the holiday season. The further she walked, the more the scenery changed. Gone were the crowded tenements and noisy bodegas, replaced by stately brownstones and manicured lawns. Lily knew she was out of place in this affluent neighborhood, but something urged her onward. As she turned a corner, she found herself face to face with an imposing iron gate. Beyond it stood a magnificent mansion, its windows aglow with warm light that seemed to beckon her closer. Her heart racing, Lily approached the gate. It was slightly ajar, as if inviting her in. She hesitated for a moment, her street-honed instincts warning her of potential danger. But the cold was seeping into her bones, and the promise of warmth was too tempting to resist. With trembling hands, she pushed the gate open just enough to slip through. The gravel crunched beneath her worn shoes as she made her way up the winding driveway. Each step felt momentous, as if she were walking towards a destiny she couldn't yet comprehend. As she neared the front door, Lily's resolve began to waver. What was she doing here? What if she was turned away, or worse, reported to the authorities? But before she could turn back, her gaze fell upon the ornate door knocker, a brass lion's head that seemed to stare right through her. Taking a deep breath, Lily reached up and grasped the knocker. The sound it made as it struck the door seemed to reverberate through her entire being. She waited, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure it could be heard on the other side of the door. Moments passed, feeling like an eternity. Just as Lily was about to lose her nerve and flee, she heard footsteps approaching from within. The porch light flickered on, momentarily blinding her. She blinked rapidly, trying to adjust her vision as the door slowly swung open. And there, framed in the doorway, stood Richard, the man from the photograph, the man from the restaurant. Lily's breath caught in her throat as their eyes met. Recognition flickered across his face, quickly followed by confusion. "You," he began, his brow furrowing. "You're the girl from the restaurant. What are you doing here?" Lily opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. All the rehearsed explanations, all the desperate pleas she had imagined on her journey here, evaporated in an instant. Instead, with hands trembling from both cold and emotion, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a carefully folded envelope. The envelope was worn and dirty, pieced together from scraps of paper she had collected. Inside were the remnants of the photograph, torn and crumpled, but still recognizable, along with a crudely written note. With eyes brimming with unshed tears, Lily held out the envelope to Richard. Richard hesitated for a moment before taking the envelope from her small hands. As he opened it, his eyes widened in recognition at the sight of the photograph. His gaze moved from the photo to Lily's face, searching for a connection he couldn't quite grasp. Then his eyes fell on the note. Written in a child's unsteady hand were 3 simple words that would change everything. "Happy New Year, Dad." Richard's sharp intake of breath was audible in the silence that followed. He looked at Lily, really looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. I don't understand," he stammered, his voice thick with emotion. Before Lily could respond, a woman's voice called out from within the house. "Richard, who's at the door?" Margaret, the woman from the restaurant, appeared behind Richard. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene before her, her husband standing frozen in the doorway and the small, bedraggled child on their porch. "Richard?" Margaret prompted, her voice laced with concern and curiosity. Richard's voice trailed off as he struggled to find the right words. The tension in the air was palpable as Margaret looked from her husband to the shivering child on their doorstep, her brow furrowed in confusion and concern. "I think you'd better come inside," Margaret said softly, her maternal instincts overriding any hesitation she might have felt. She gently placed a hand on Richard's arm, guiding him back into the warmth of their home. Lily hesitated for a moment, her street-honed instincts warring with her desperate need for warmth and safety. But as Margaret held out her hand, a kind smile on her face, Lily found herself stepping over the threshold into a world she had only dreamed of. The foyer was grand, with a sweeping staircase and glittering chandeliers that made Lily's eyes widen in wonder. But it was the warmth that truly overwhelmed her. Not just the physical warmth that began to thaw her frozen limbs, but the warmth of a home filled with love and care. "Let's get you warmed up," Margaret said, leading Lily towards a cozy sitting room where a fire crackled merrily in the hearth. "Richard, would you fetch a blanket and some hot cocoa?" Richard nodded numbly, still clutching the envelope Lily had given him. As he left the room, Margaret helped Lily settle into a plush armchair that seemed to swallow her small frame. "Now then," Margaret said, kneeling in front of Lily so they were at eye level, "can you tell me your name, sweetheart?" "Lily," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse and emotion. "My name is Lily." Margaret's smile widened. "That's a beautiful name, Lily. Can you tell me how you found us?" Before Lily could respond, Richard returned with a thick, fluffy blanket and a steaming mug of cocoa. His hands shook slightly as he handed the items to Margaret, who wrapped the blanket around Lily's shoulders and pressed the warm mug into her hands. "Careful now. It's hot," Margaret cautioned gently. As Lily sipped the rich, sweet liquid, feeling it warm her from the inside out, Richard cleared his throat. "Margaret," he said, his voice strained, "I think we need to talk." Margaret glanced at her husband, noting the conflicted emotions playing across his face. She squeezed Lily's shoulder reassuringly. "Lily, why don't you enjoy your cocoa while I speak with Richard for a moment? We'll be right back." As the couple stepped into the adjoining study, closing the door behind them, Lily found herself alone in the opulent room. She clutched her blue rosary tightly, sending a silent prayer of thanks to her mother for guiding her here. In the study, Richard paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair in agitation. "Margaret, I don't know how to explain this," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. Margaret sat on the edge of the desk, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to her husband's distress. "Start at the beginning, Richard," she said softly. Taking a deep breath, Richard unfolded the crumpled note from the envelope. "This child, Lily, she believes I'm her father." Margaret's eyes widened, but she remained silent, waiting for Richard to continue. "Years ago, before we met, I had a relationship with a woman named Sarah," Richard explained, his voice thick with emotion. "It was brief but intense. When it ended, I threw myself into my work trying to forget. I never knew." He trailed off, his eyes filling with tears. Margaret stood, crossing the room to embrace her husband. "Oh, Richard," she murmured, "why didn't you ever tell me about her?" Richard shook his head, guilt etched across his features. "I thought it was in the past. I never imagined, Margaret, what if she really is my daughter? What are we going to do?" Margaret took a step back, her hands resting on Richard's shoulders as she looked him in the eye. "First, we're going to take care of that little girl out there. She's cold, hungry, and alone on New Year's Eve. Whatever else happens, we have a responsibility to help her." Richard nodded, drawing strength from his wife's unwavering support. "You're right, of course, but what about after tonight? If she really is my daughter, then we'll face that together," Margaret said firmly. "Richard, you know how long we've been trying to have a child of our own. Maybe this is the universe answering our prayers in an unexpected way." Richard stared at his wife in amazement, overwhelmed by her compassion and strength. "Margaret, I don't deserve you," he said softly, pulling her into a tight embrace. As they held each other, both lost in thought about the sudden turn their lives had taken, a small sound from the other room caught their attention. They opened the study door to find Lily standing there, the empty cocoa mug clutched in her hands, uncertainty written across her face. "I'm sorry," she said in a small voice. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I didn't know where to put the mug." Margaret's heart melted at the sight of the little girl trying so hard to be polite, in a world that had clearly shown her little kindness. She stepped forward, gently taking the mug from Lily's hands. "You didn't interrupt anything, sweetheart. In fact, we were just coming to check on you. Are you feeling a bit warmer now?" Lily nodded, her eyes darting between Margaret and Richard. "Thank you for the cocoa," she said softly. "It was the best thing I've ever tasted." Richard knelt down so he was at eye level with Lily. "Lily," he said gently, "we'd like to ask you a few questions if that's okay. Can you tell us about your mother?" Lily's hand instinctively went to the blue rosary around her neck. "My mom, she got very sick," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. Before she had to go away, she gave me this rosary. She told me it would keep me safe and remind me that she's always with me." Richard and Margaret exchanged a glance, their hearts breaking for the little girl who had endured so much. "And your father?" Richard asked carefully. "What do you know about him?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I never knew him," she admitted. "But Mom always said he was a good man who would have loved me if he'd known about me. When I found the picture of you with her, I hoped." Her voice trailed off as she looked up at Richard, hope and fear warring in her eyes. Richard felt a lump form in his throat as he gazed at the child who might be his daughter. Without thinking, he reached out and pulled Lily into a gentle hug. "It's okay, Lily," he murmured, his own eyes damp with unshed tears. "We're going to figure this out together. You're safe now." As Richard held Lily, Margaret watched the scene unfold with a mix of emotions. She had always dreamed of having a child, of creating a family with Richard. Now, faced with this unexpected turn of events, she found herself opening her heart to the possibility of a different kind of family. "Lily," Margaret said softly, joining Richard in kneeling beside the little girl, "how would you like to stay with us for a while? At least until we can sort everything out?" Lily's eyes widened in disbelief. "Really?" she asked, her voice trembling with hope. You want me to stay?" Richard and Margaret exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. "Yes, Lily," Richard said firmly, "we want you to stay." As the clock in the hallway began to chime, signaling the arrival of the new year, Lily found herself enveloped in the warm embrace of two people who, just hours ago, had been strangers. For the first time in years, she felt safe, wanted, and loved. Outside, Fireworks began to light up the night sky, their colorful bursts a fitting backdrop to the new beginning unfolding within the walls of the mansion. As Lily gazed out the window at the dazzling display, her hand clutching her mother's rosary, she sent a silent thank you to the shooting star that had guided her here. The road ahead would not be easy. There were questions to be answered, legal matters to be addressed, and emotional hurdles to overcome. But in that moment, as the new year dawned with all its promise and potential, a fragile hope began to blossom in the hearts of Lily, Richard, and Margaret. The hope of a family forged not by blood but by love and compassion. And as the fireworks continued to paint the sky with bursts of color, Lily turned back to Richard and Margaret, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Happy New Year," she said softly, her voice filled with a tentative joy. Richard and Margaret, their arms still around Lily, echoed the sentiment. "Happy New Year, Lily," they said in unison, their voices thick with emotion. And as the first minutes of the new year ticked by, the three of them stood together, watching the fireworks and daring to dream of the future that lay ahead, a future that just hours ago none of them could have imagined. The days following New Year's Eve brought a whirlwind of changes to the lives of Lily, Richard, and Margaret. The grand mansion, once a showcase of opulent furnishings and priceless art, began to transform into a home filled with the laughter and energy of a child. For Lily, the adjustment was both thrilling and terrifying. After years of fending for herself on the streets, she found the sudden abundance of food, warmth, and care almost overwhelming. She would often wake in the middle of the night, panicked and disoriented, only to remember that she was safe in her new bedroom, a room larger than any space she had ever called her own. Richard and Margaret, for their part, threw themselves into their new roles with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. They hired the best lawyers to begin the process of legally adopting Lily and engaged a private investigator to delve into the details of her background. But beyond the legalities, they focused on creating a nurturing environment for the little girl who had so unexpectedly entered their lives. Margaret took charge of Lily's education, arranging for tutors to help her catch up on the years of schooling she had missed. She was amazed by Lily's quick mind and eagerness to learn, often finding the little girl curled up in the library with a book far beyond her years. "Lily," Margaret said one afternoon, finding her engrossed in a thick volume of world history, "wouldn't you rather play outside? It's such a beautiful day." Lily looked up, her eyes wide with wonder. "Did you know that there was a queen in Egypt named Cleopatra?" she asked excitedly. She could speak 9 languages and was really smart. Margaret couldn't help but smile at Lily's enthusiasm. "Is that so? Why don't you tell me more about her over a picnic in the garden? We can pretend we're Egyptian royalty." As they spread a blanket on the lush grass, Lily regaled Margaret with facts about ancient Egypt, her face animated with excitement. Margaret found herself marveling at the resilience of this child, who, despite the hardships she had faced, still approached the world with such curiosity and joy. Richard, meanwhile, found himself facing unexpected challenges in connecting with Lily. His world of board meetings and business deals had not prepared him for the complexities of fatherhood. He often felt awkward and unsure around Lily, afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing. One evening, as Richard sat in his study poring over adoption papers, he heard a small knock at the door. "Come in," he called, looking up to see Lily peeking around the doorframe. "Mr. Richard," she said hesitantly, "I was wondering, could you teach me how to play chess? I saw the beautiful set in the living room, and I've always wanted to learn." Richard felt a surge of warmth in his chest. "Of course, Lily," he said, pushing aside the papers. "I'd be happy to teach you. And please, you don't have to call me Mr. Richard. Just Richard is fine." As they set up the chessboard, Richard began to explain the moves of each piece. To his surprise and delight, Lily picked up the rules quickly, her brow furrowed in concentration as she considered each move. "Checkmate!" Lily exclaimed triumphantly at the end of their third game, her eyes sparkling with joy. Richard laughed, a full, hearty laugh that he hadn't experienced in years. "Well done, Lily, you're a natural. We'll have to play again tomorrow." As Lily skipped out of the room, chattering excitedly about her victory, Richard felt a shift in his heart. The awkwardness and uncertainty began to melt away, replaced by a growing sense of pride and affection. While Lily's days were filled with learning and new experiences, her nights were often haunted by memories of her life on the streets. She would wake up in a cold sweat, clutching her blue rosary and calling out for her mother. On one such night, Margaret heard Lily's cries and rushed to her room. She found the little girl huddled in the corner, tears streaming down her face. "Shh, it's okay, Lily," Margaret soothed, gathering the trembling child in her arms. "You're safe now. It was just a bad dream." As Lily's sobs subsided, Margaret gently stroked her hair. "Would you like to tell me about it?" she asked softly. Lily hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I dreamed I was back on the streets," she whispered. "It was so cold, and I was so hungry. I couldn't find my way back here, and I was afraid you and Richard had forgotten about me." Margaret's heart ached at Lily's words. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, hugging Lily tighter. "We could never forget about you. You're a part of our family now." As she held Lily, Margaret began to hum a lullaby, a song her own mother had sung to her as a child. Slowly, Lily's breathing evened out, and she drifted back to sleep, still clutching her rosary. Margaret carefully tucked Lily back into bed, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. As she turned to leave, she noticed a piece of paper sticking out from under Lily's pillow. Curiosity got the better of her, and she carefully pulled it out. It was a letter written in a shaky, childish hand. Margaret's eyes widened as she read, "Dear Mom in heaven, I miss you so much. I hope you can see me from up there. I found the man from the picture. His name is Richard. He and his wife Margaret are very nice. They're taking care of me now. I think they might want to be my new family. Is that okay? I promise I'll never forget you. I love you, Mom. Love, Lily." Tears welled up in Margaret's eyes as she carefully folded the letter and placed it back under Lily's pillow. In that moment, she made a silent vow to honor the memory of Lily's mother and to love this little girl with all her heart. As the weeks passed, the bond between Lily, Richard, and Margaret grew stronger. But challenges still lay ahead. The private investigator had uncovered some information about Lily's background, and Richard knew they would soon have to face the truth about her parentage. One sunny afternoon, as Lily and Margaret were tending to the garden, planting colorful spring flowers, Richard received a call from the investigator. The news he heard made his blood run cold. "Margaret," he called from the patio, his voice strained, "can I speak with you for a moment?" As Margaret excused herself and walked towards Richard, Lily watched them with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see the worry etched on their faces. "What's wrong?" Lily asked as Margaret returned, trying to mask her concern with a smile. "Nothing for you to worry about, sweetheart," Margaret reassured her, but Lily could sense the tension in her voice. "Why don't you go wash up for dinner? We're having your favorite, spaghetti and meatballs." As the warm spring sun began to set, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn, Lily made her way back to the house. Her hands were still covered in dirt from planting flowers with Margaret, a task she had come to love over the past few weeks. It gave her a sense of purpose, of creating something beautiful and watching it grow. But as she approached the patio doors, she could hear the hushed, urgent tones of Richard and Margaret's conversation. They were trying to keep their voices low, but Lily had spent years on the streets, where keen hearing could mean the difference between a meal and going hungry. She couldn't make out every word, but what she did hear made her heart race. "Not his daughter. The DNA test. What are we going to do?" Lily froze, her hand on the door handle. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and she felt as if the ground was shifting beneath her feet. Not his daughter, but that meant everything she had believed, everything she had hoped for, was a lie. She stumbled backward, away from the door, away from the voices that were shattering her world. Without thinking, she began to run, her feet carrying her across the lawn, past the flower beds she had so lovingly tended, and towards the iron gates that separated this dream world from the harsh reality she had known before. Inside the house, Richard paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair in agitation. "Margaret, how are we going to tell her? She's been through so much already. This will devastate her." Margaret sat on the edge of the sofa, her face pale but determined. "We tell her the truth, Richard. We owe her that much. And then we remind her that DNA doesn't make a family, love does. Richard stopped pacing and looked at his wife, a mixture of awe and gratitude in his eyes. So you still want to go through with the adoption, even knowing she's not, that I'm not? Of course I do, Margaret said firmly, standing up and taking Richard's hands in hers. Lily is our daughter in every way that matters, unless… She hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. Unless you've changed your mind. No. Richard's response was immediate and vehement. No, I love her. I love her as if she were my own flesh and blood. I'm afraid she won't want us once she knows the truth. Margaret squeezed his hands reassuringly. Then we'll make sure she knows that our love for her is unconditional, that no matter what, she has a home here with us. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. Exchanging puzzled glances, they weren't expecting any visitors. Richard went to answer it. He opened the door to find one of their groundskeepers, looking flustered and out of breath. "Mr. Hawthorne," the man panted, "I just saw the little miss running towards the woods at the edge of the property. She seemed upset. I tried to call out to her, but she didn't stop." Richard felt his heart drop. "Lily," he breathed, turning to Margaret with panic in his eyes. "She must have overheard us. We have to find her." Without hesitation, Richard and Margaret rushed out into the gathering dusk, calling Lily's name. The woods at the edge of their property were dense and dark, and the thought of Lily alone and frightened in there filled them both with terror. As they searched, calling Lily's name and listening desperately for any response, Margaret couldn't help but think of all the ways their lives had changed since that New Year's Eve, when a small, shivering girl had shown up on their doorstep. The joy Lily had brought into their lives, the way she had opened their hearts, it couldn't end like this. Meanwhile, Lily ran blindly through the woods, branches scratching at her arms and face, tears blurring her vision. She clutched her blue rosary tightly, the familiar beads her only comfort in the growing darkness. "Mom," she sobbed as she ran, "why did you let me believe a lie? Why did you send me to them if they're not my real family?" As the woods grew darker and the shadows longer, Lily's pace began to slow. The initial burst of adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her exhausted and disoriented. She had no idea where she was or how to get back, even if she wanted to. Stumbling over a root, Lily fell to her knees. The impact sent a jolt of pain through her body, but it was nothing compared to the ache in her heart. She curled up at the base of a large oak tree, hugging her knees to her chest. As she sat there, shivering in the cooling night air, a memory surfaced, a conversation with her mother, not long before she fell ill. "Lily, my sweet girl," her mother had said, her voice weak but filled with love. "Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about the people who choose to love you, who choose to be there for you no matter what." At the time, Lily hadn't understood what her mother meant. But now, as she thought about the past few months with Richard and Margaret, the bedtime stories, the chess games, the garden planting, the patient tutoring, she began to see the truth in her mother's words. They had chosen her. Even before they knew for certain whether she was Richard's daughter, they had opened their home and their hearts to her. They had given her safety, education, and most importantly, love. A twig snapped nearby, startling Lily out of her reverie. She held her breath, fear prickling along her spine. But then she heard a familiar voice calling her name. "Lily! Lily, where are you? Please answer us." It was Margaret's voice, filled with worry and something else. Love. And not far behind she could hear Richard's deeper tones, equally concerned. For a moment Lily hesitated. Part of her, the part that had learned to survive on the streets by trusting no one, wanted to stay hidden, to protect herself from further hurt. But another part, the part that had flourished under Richard and Margaret's care, longed to run towards those voices. Taking a deep breath, Lily made her decision. "I'm here," she called out, her voice hoarse from crying. "I'm over here." The sound of running footsteps grew closer, and suddenly Margaret burst into view, her hair disheveled and her clothes smudged with dirt. When she saw Lily, her face crumpled with relief. "Oh, Lily!" she cried, rushing forward and enveloping the girl in a fierce hug. "We were so worried. Are you all right? Are you hurt?" Richard appeared a moment later, looking equally distraught. He knelt down beside them, placing a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. "Lily," he said softly, "we're so sorry. We never meant for you to find out like this." Lily looked up at them, her eyes brimming with fresh tears. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You're not my real father." Richard and Margaret exchanged a glance before Richard answered, his voice thick with emotion. "Biologically, no, I'm not your father. But Lily, that doesn't change how I feel about you. It doesn't change that I want to be your dad, if you'll let me." Margaret nodded, her arms still wrapped protectively around Lily. "We love you, sweetheart. We want you to be part of our family, no matter what any test says." Lily looked from Richard to Margaret, seeing the sincerity in their eyes, the love and concern etched on their faces. She thought about all they had done for her, all the ways they had shown their love. Slowly, she reached out and took Richard's hand, then Margaret's. Can we go home now?" she asked tentatively. The smiles that broke out on Richard and Margaret's faces were radiant, even in the dim forest light. "Yes, Lily," Richard said, scooping her up in his arms as he stood. "Let's go home." As they made their way out of the woods, Lily resting her head on Richard's shoulder and Margaret walking close beside them, a sense of peace settled over them. They knew there would be challenges ahead, difficult conversations to be had, and adjustments to be made. But they also knew that they would face it all together, as a family bound not by blood, but by choice and love. The lights of the mansion came into view, a beacon of warmth and safety in the night. And as they approached, Lily realized that for the first time in her young life, she truly understood what it meant to be home. The days following Lily's discovery and subsequent flight into the woods were filled with quiet conversations and gentle reassurances. Richard and Margaret, true to their word, sat down with Lily and explained everything they had learned from the private investigator. They told her about her mother's brief relationship with Richard, about the misunderstanding that had led Lily to believe Richard was her biological father. They answered her questions as honestly as they could, always emphasizing that their love for her was unchanged. Lily listened silently, her small face serious as she absorbed the information. When they finished, she remained quiet for a long moment, fiddling with the blue rosary around her neck. "So," she said finally, her voice small but steady, "if you're not my real dad, does that mean do I have to leave?" Richard felt his heart constrict at the fear in Lily's eyes. He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "Lily," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you will always have a home with us if that's what you want. Margaret and we'd like to adopt you, to make you officially part of our family." Lily's eyes widened. "Really?" she breathed, looking from Richard to Margaret. Even though we're not related?" Margaret smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "Family isn't just about blood, sweetheart. It's about love, about choosing each other. And we choose you, Lily. We love you and want you to be our daughter." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, but for the first time in days they were tears of joy. She threw her arms around Richard and Margaret, hugging them tightly. "I choose you too," she whispered. From that moment on, a new chapter began in their lives. The adoption process, which had been put on hold pending the results of the investigation, was restarted with renewed vigor. Richard and Margaret were determined to make Lily legally and irrevocably their daughter. As spring blossomed into summer, the mansion came alive with the sounds of laughter and play. Lily, secure in the knowledge that she was loved and wanted, began to truly flourish. Her nightmares became less frequent, and her smile, once rare and hesitant, became a constant presence. One warm afternoon, as Lily and Margaret were tending to their flourishing garden, Lily paused, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Margaret," she said, her hands covered in soil as she planted a new row of sunflowers, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart," Margaret replied, wiping her brow with the back of her hand. "You can ask me anything." Lily bit her lip, hesitating for a moment before speaking. "Would it be okay if I called you Mom and Richard Dad?" Margaret felt her heart swell with joy. She set down her gardening tools and turned to face Lily fully. "Oh, Lily," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Nothing would make us happier, but only if you're comfortable with it. We don't want you to feel pressured." Lily's face broke into a radiant smile. "I want to," she said firmly. "You are my mom and dad, in all the ways that matter." That evening, as they sat down to dinner, Lily cleared her throat nervously. Richard and Margaret looked at her expectantly, sensing she had something important to say. I wanted to thank you," Lily began, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. "For everything you've done for me, for loving me and wanting me, even when you found out I wasn't biologically yours." She took a deep breath, then continued. "And I wanted to ask if it would be okay if I called you Mom and Dad from now on." Richard felt tears prick his eyes as he exchanged a glance with Margaret. "Lily," he said, his voice choked with emotion, "we would be honored." From that day forward, Mom and Dad became Lily's names for Margaret and Richard, each utterance a reminder of the family they had built together. As summer progressed, the family decided to take a vacation to the beach. It would be Lily's first time seeing the ocean, and her excitement was contagious. They rented a cozy beach house, and Lily spent hours exploring the shore, collecting seashells, and building elaborate sandcastles. One evening, as the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, the family sat together on the beach. Lily, nestled between Richard and Margaret, looked out at the vast expanse of water before them. "It's so big," she murmured in awe. "It makes me feel small, but not in a scary way. More like I'm part of something huge and beautiful." Richard squeezed her shoulder gently. "That's a wonderful way to look at it, sweetheart. We are all part of something bigger than ourselves." As they watched the sun sink below the horizon, Lily suddenly sat up straighter. "Look," she exclaimed, pointing to the sky. "A shooting star!" Sure enough, a bright streak of light arced across the darkening sky. Margaret smiled, remembering the night Lily had arrived on their doorstep. "Make a wish, Lily," she said softly. Lily closed her eyes tightly for a moment, then opened them with a contented sigh. "I don't need to," she said, snuggling closer to her parents. "I already have everything I could wish for." As they made their way back to the beach house, hand in hand, Richard and Margaret exchanged a glance over Lily's head. They didn't need words to express what they were feeling, the joy, the love, the sense of completeness that Lily had brought into their lives. That night, as Lily slept peacefully in her room, the sound of waves crashing on the shore a soothing lullaby, Richard and Margaret sat on the porch, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. "You know," Richard said softly, taking Margaret's hand in his, "when I first saw Lily on our doorstep that New Year's Eve, I was terrified. I thought she was going to turn our lives upside down." Margaret chuckled softly. "She did turn our lives upside down," she pointed out, "but in the best possible way." Richard nodded, a smile playing on his lips. "I never imagined I could love someone so much so quickly. She's taught me so much about what it means to be a father, about unconditional love." "She's taught us both," Margaret agreed, "and she's given us the family we always dreamed of." As they sat there, listening to the rhythmic sound of the waves and the soft breathing of their daughter sleeping inside, both Richard and Margaret felt a profound sense of gratitude. Their family might not have come together in the way they had originally envisioned, but it was perfect in its own unique way. Inside, Lily stirred in her sleep, her hand instinctively reaching for the blue rosary on her bedside table. In her dreams, she saw her mother smiling down at her, surrounded by a warm, golden light. "I'm so happy for you, my sweet girl," her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "You've found your home." Lily smiled in her sleep, her heart full of love for her mother who had given her life, and for the parents who had given her a home. As she drifted back into deeper sleep, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The next morning dawned bright and clear, full of promise for new adventures and cherished moments with her family. Lily woke early, excited for another day at the beach. As she stepped out onto the porch, she found her parents already there, enjoying the morning sun. "Good morning, Mom, Dad," she said, her face beaming with happiness. Richard and Margaret turned to her, their faces lighting up at the sight of their daughter. "Good morning, sweetheart," they replied in unison, opening their arms for a hug. As summer faded into autumn, the Hawthorne family settled into a comfortable routine. Lily had started attending a prestigious private school where her quick mind and eagerness to learn quickly made her a favorite among her teachers. Richard and Margaret watched with pride as their daughter blossomed, making friends and excelling in her studies. However, the transition wasn't without its challenges. Lily, used to the harsh realities of street life, sometimes struggled to relate to her privileged classmates. One crisp October afternoon, Margaret received a call from the school principal. "Mrs. Hawthorne," the principal's voice was grave, "we need to discuss an incident involving Lily. Could you and Mr. Hawthorne come in for a meeting?" Margaret's heart raced as she agreed to the meeting. She found Richard in his study and relayed the message. They exchanged worried glances, both wondering what could have happened. When they arrived at the school, they found Lily sitting outside the principal's office, her eyes red-rimmed and her shoulders slumped. She looked up as they approached, fear and shame written across her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Before Richard or Margaret could respond, the principal opened her door. "Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, please come in. Lily, you wait here." Inside the office, the principal, Mrs. Chen, gestured for them to sit. "I'm afraid we've had a serious incident today," she began. "Lily was caught stealing food from the cafeteria and hiding it in her backpack." Margaret gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Richard leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "There must be some mistake," he said. "Lily has no need to steal food. We provide her with everything she needs." Mrs. Chen nodded sympathetically. "I understand this is shocking." When confronted, Lily became very upset. She said she was saving it for later just in case. "We believe this may be a result of her previous circumstances." The realization hit Richard and Margaret like a physical blow. Despite all their love and care, Lily was still haunted by her years of deprivation on the streets. "What happens now?" Margaret asked, her voice tight with worry. "Normally theft would result in suspension," Mrs. Chen said. "However, given Lily's unique situation and her otherwise exemplary behavior, we believe counseling would be a more appropriate response. We have an excellent child psychologist on staff who specializes in cases like Lily's." Richard and Margaret agreed readily, thanking Mrs. Chen for her understanding. As they left the office, they found Lily still waiting, her small frame tense with anxiety. "Am I in trouble?" she asked in a small voice. Are you going to send me away?" Margaret knelt down, taking Lily's hands in hers. "Oh, sweetheart, no. We would never send you away. We love you and we're going to help you through this." Richard joined them, placing a comforting hand on Lily's shoulder. "We're a family, Lily. We face challenges together." On the drive home, Lily sat quietly in the back seat, clutching her blue rosary. As they pulled into the driveway, she finally spoke. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I have enough food now. I don't know why I did it. I got scared, like maybe one day all this would disappear and I'd be hungry again." Richard turned in his seat to face her. "Lily, listen to me. What you're feeling is normal after what you've been through. But I promise you, you will never have to worry about going hungry again. This is your home and we are your family. Nothing will change that." That evening, over a warm dinner of Lily's favorite spaghetti and meatballs, they talked openly about Lily's fears. Richard and Margaret listened patiently as Lily haltingly explained the anxiety that sometimes gripped her, the irrational fear that her new life was too good to be true. "I keep waiting for something bad to happen," Lily admitted, pushing her meatballs around her plate. "Sometimes I think maybe I don't deserve all this." Margaret reached across the table, squeezing Lily's hand. "You deserve all the love and happiness in the world, sweetheart, and we're going to keep telling you that until you believe it." After dinner, as Lily was getting ready for bed, she found Richard in the hallway. "Dad," she said hesitantly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, Pumpkin, anything." Lily took a deep breath. When you found out I wasn't really your daughter, did you ever wish even for a second that you hadn't taken me in?" Richard felt his heart constrict at the vulnerability in Lily's eyes. He knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level. "Lily, listen to me very carefully. The day we found out I wasn't your biological father was one of the scariest days of my life, but not because I wished I hadn't taken you in. I was terrified because I thought I might lose you. You are my daughter in every way that matters. Biology doesn't make a family. Love does." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes as she threw her arms around Richard's neck. "I love you, Dad," she whispered. "I love you too, sweetheart, more than you could ever know." The next few weeks were filled with counseling sessions, both for Lily individually and for the family as a whole. Slowly but surely, Lily began to open up about her fears and anxieties. With professional help and the unwavering support of her parents, she started to develop healthier coping mechanisms. One of the strategies suggested by the counselor was for Lily to keep a gratitude journal. Each night before bed, she would write down 3 things she was thankful for. At first, Lily found it challenging, her mind often dwelling on her fears rather than her blessings. But as the days passed, she found herself looking forward to this nightly ritual. On a chilly November evening, as Margaret was tucking Lily into bed, she noticed the journal open on the nightstand. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the book. Lily nodded, a shy smile on her face. Margaret picked up the journal and read the day's entry. "I'm thankful for Mom's hugs. They make me feel safe and loved. I'm thankful for Dad's chess lessons. He never gets mad when I make a mistake. I'm thankful for my blue rosary. It reminds me that I have 2 moms who love me, one in heaven and one here with me." Margaret felt tears prick her eyes as she read Lily's words. She set the journal down and gathered Lily into a tight hug. "We're thankful for you too, sweetheart. Every single day." As the first snow of winter began to fall outside Lily's window, blanketing the world in a soft white glow, the Hawthorne family felt a sense of peace settle over them. They had faced their first real challenge as a family and had come out stronger for it. Lily, nestled in her warm bed, held her blue rosary close and whispered a quiet thank you to her mother in heaven. She felt, for the first time in a long while, truly at peace. As she drifted off to sleep, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the love and support of her family, the family that had chosen her and that she had chosen in return. As December arrived, bringing with it a flurry of snowflakes and holiday cheer, the Hawthorne mansion transformed into a winter wonderland. Twinkling lights adorned every window, and the scent of freshly baked cookies filled the air. For Lily, it was a magical time, unlike anything she had ever experienced. One evening, as the family sat around the fireplace, sipping hot cocoa and admiring their newly decorated Christmas tree, Lily grew uncharacteristically quiet. Margaret noticed her daughter's pensive expression and gently asked, "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" Lily hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I was just thinking, this is my first real Christmas. My first Christmas with a family and a home." She paused, fiddling with the blue rosary around her neck. "I want to do something special, to show you both how much you mean to me, but I don't have any money for gifts." Richard set down his mug and moved to sit beside Lily on the plush rug. "Oh, Pumpkin," he said softly, "you don't need to buy us anything. Having you here with us, that's the greatest gift we could ever ask for." Lily smiled, but there was still a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I know, but I want to give you something that shows how much I love you." Margaret joined them on the rug, forming a cozy circle in front of the crackling fire. "Well," she said thoughtfully, "the best gifts often come from the heart, not from a store. Is there something you could make for us?" Lily's eyes lit up at the suggestion. "Maybe, but I'd need some help, and it would have to be a surprise." Over the next few weeks, Lily threw herself into her secret project with enthusiasm. She enlisted the help of her art teacher at school, spending every free moment working on her mysterious gift. Richard and Margaret, true to their word, didn't pry, although their curiosity was piqued by Lily's sudden interest in spending extra time at school. As Christmas Eve approached, The excitement in the Hawthorne household reached a fever pitch. Lily could barely contain herself, her eyes sparkling with anticipation every time she looked at the brightly wrapped package she had placed under the tree. That evening, after a festive dinner of roast turkey and all the trimmings, the family gathered in the living room for their tradition of opening one gift each on Christmas Eve. Lily insisted that her parents open their gift from her first. With trembling hands, she handed them the package. "It's for both of you," she said, her voice quivering with nervous excitement. "I hope you like it." Richard and Margaret exchanged a glance before carefully unwrapping the gift. As the paper fell away, they gasped in unison. In their hands was a beautifully crafted photo album, its cover adorned with an intricate mosaic of colorful tiles forming the word family. "Oh, Lily," Margaret breathed, her eyes filling with tears. "It's beautiful." Richard nodded, too choked up to speak. They opened the album, and on the first page, in Lily's careful handwriting, was a note. "Dear Mom and Dad, thank you for giving me a home, a family, and all the love in the world. This album is to remind us of all the happy memories we've made and all the ones we'll make in the future. I love you both so much, your daughter Lily." As they turned the pages, they found a collection of photographs chronicling their time together. There were pictures from their beach vacation, snapshots of everyday moments like baking cookies and playing chess, and even a few older photos of Richard and Margaret that Lily had found and included. But it was the final page that truly took their breath away. It was a hand-drawn picture of the three of them standing in front of their home. Above the drawing, Lily had written in careful cursive, "The Hawthorne family, bound by love, not blood." Richard and Margaret looked up from the album to find Lily watching them anxiously. "Do you like it?" she asked, her voice small. In response, they opened their arms and Lily rushed into their embrace. The three of them held each other tightly, tears of joy streaming down their faces. "Like it?" Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "Lily, this is the most precious gift we've ever received." Margaret nodded in agreement. "It's perfect, sweetheart. Absolutely perfect." As they sat there huddled together in front of the twinkling Christmas tree, Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in her life, she felt truly, completely at home. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, vibrating with excitement for Christmas morning, Richard and Margaret sat together on the couch, still poring over the photo album. "You know," Richard said softly, "when I think about how close we came to missing out on all of this, it terrifies me." Margaret squeezed his hand. "But we didn't miss it. Lily found us, and we found her. That's what matters." Richard nodded, a smile playing on his lips. "She's changed our lives in ways I never could have imagined. I can't believe how much I love her." "I know," Margaret agreed. "It's like she filled a hole in our hearts that we didn't even know was there." As they closed the album and prepared to head to bed, both Richard and Margaret felt a profound sense of gratitude. Their family might not have come together in the traditional way, but it was perfect in its own unique way. Upstairs, Lily lay in her bed, too excited to sleep. She held her blue rosary close, whispering a quiet prayer of thanks. "Thank you for guiding me to my new family," she murmured, "and thank you, Mom, for watching over me. I hope you're happy that I'm happy." As she drifted off to sleep, a sense of peace settled over the Hawthorne household. Outside, snow fell softly, blanketing the world in pristine white. Inside, three hearts beat as one, bound together by a love stronger than any biological tie. The journey hadn't been easy, and there would undoubtedly be more challenges ahead. But as they slept that Christmas Eve, Lily, Richard, and Margaret knew that together they could face anything. They were a family in every sense of the word, and that was the greatest gift of all. As the new year dawned, bringing with it fresh possibilities and challenges, the Hawthorne family found themselves entering a new chapter in their lives. Lily, now more settled and confident in her place within the family, was thriving both at school and at home. However, as she grew older and more aware of the world around her, new questions began to surface. One crisp January morning, as Lily sat at the breakfast table absently stirring her cereal, she suddenly looked up at Richard and Margaret with a thoughtful expression. "Mom, Dad," she began hesitantly. "I've been thinking, are there other kids out there like me? Kids who don't have families?" Richard and Margaret exchanged a glance, sensing the weight behind Lily's question. "Yes, sweetheart," Margaret replied gently. "Unfortunately, there are many children who don't have families of their own." Lily's brow furrowed as she processed this information. "That's not fair," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of sadness and indignation. "Everyone should have a family like I do." Richard reached across the table, placing his hand over Lily's. "You're right, it's not fair, but there are people and organizations working hard to help those children find loving homes." Lily's eyes lit up with sudden determination. "Can we help?" she asked eagerly. "I want to do something for kids like me." Margaret felt a surge of pride at her daughter's compassion. "That's a wonderful idea, Lily. What did you have in mind?" Over the next few weeks, Lily threw herself into researching various children's charities and organizations that worked with orphaned and foster children. With Richard and Margaret's guidance, she decided to organize a fundraiser at her school to benefit a local children's home. The project quickly became a family affair. Richard used his business connections to secure donations for a charity auction, while Margaret helped Lily design posters and flyers to promote the event. Lily herself went from class to class, speaking passionately about the importance of helping children in need. As the day of the fundraiser approached, Lily's excitement was palpable. She had poured her heart and soul into the project, and her enthusiasm had infected the entire school. On the morning of the event, as they were setting up in the school gymnasium, Lily turned to her parents with a nervous smile. "Do you think we'll be able to make a difference?" she asked, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. Richard knelt down beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Lily, you've already made a difference. Look around you," he said, gesturing to the bustling gymnasium filled with volunteers and donated items. "You inspired all of this. No matter what happens today, you should be incredibly proud of yourself." Margaret nodded in agreement, pulling Lily into a warm hug. "Your dad's right, sweetheart. You've shown incredible compassion and initiative. We couldn't be more proud of you." As the doors opened and people began to stream in, Lily's nervousness gave way to excitement. She threw herself into her role as host, greeting guests, explaining the various activities, and sharing her personal story with anyone who would listen. The day was a whirlwind of activity: silent auctions, bake sales, and even a talent show put on by Lily and her classmates. As the event drew to a close, Lily stood on the stage with her parents, preparing to announce the total amount raised. With trembling hands, she unfolded the piece of paper handed to her by the school principal. Her eyes widened as she read the number, a huge smile spreading across her face. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice ringing out clear and strong, "thanks to your generosity, we've raised $50,000 for the Springfield Children's Home." The gymnasium erupted in cheers and applause. Lily beamed with pride and joy, basking in the knowledge that she had made a real difference in the lives of children like herself. As they were packing up after the event, a woman approached Lily. She introduced herself as Ms. Thompson, the director of the children's home. "Lily," Ms. Thompson said, her eyes shining with gratitude, "I can't thank you enough for what you've done. This money will help us provide better care for our children, and maybe even help more of them find loving homes like you did." Lily blushed at the praise, but her eyes were serious as she looked up at Ms. Thompson. "Ms. Thompson," she said, "I was wondering, would it be okay if I came to visit the children sometimes? Maybe I could read to them or play games with them." Ms. Thompson's smile widened. "We would love that, Lily. I think you could be a wonderful role model for our children." As they drove home that evening, Lily was uncharacteristically quiet, lost in thought. Finally, as they pulled into their driveway, she spoke up. "Mom, Dad," she said, her voice filled with determination, "I think I know what I want to do when I grow up. I want to help kids like me find families. I want to make sure every child has a home where they're loved and cared for." Richard and Margaret felt their hearts swell with pride and love. "That's a wonderful goal, sweetheart," Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion. "And we'll support you every step of the way," Richard added. As they entered their home, Lily's hand instinctively went to the blue rosary around her neck. She sent a silent thank you to her mother in heaven, grateful for the journey that had led her to this moment. That night, as Lily drifted off to sleep, she felt a sense of purpose that she had never experienced before. She knew that the road ahead might be challenging, but with the love and support of her family, she was ready to face whatever came her way. And as the moon cast its gentle light through her window, Lily dreamed of a world where every child had a place to call home and a family to call their own. Spring had arrived in full force, painting the Hawthorne estate in a riot of colors. The gardens that Lily and Margaret had tended so lovingly were now in full bloom, filling the air with the sweet scent of flowers. It was on one of these perfect spring days that an unexpected letter arrived, bringing with it echoes of the past. Richard was in his study when the mail arrived. As he sifted through the usual bills and business correspondence, a plain white envelope caught his eye. It was addressed simply to the Hawthorne family, with no return address. Curiosity piqued, he carefully opened it. As he read the contents, the color drained from his face. His hands trembled slightly as he set the letter down on his desk, his mind reeling from the implications of what he had just read. "Margaret," he called out, his voice strained. "Can you come here for a moment?" Margaret appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her gardening apron. One look at Richard's face told her something was wrong. "What is it?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Richard wordlessly handed her the letter. Margaret's eyes widened as she read, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. "Oh my," she breathed. "What are we going to do?" The letter was from Sarah, Lily's biological mother. Contrary to what they had believed, she hadn't passed away. She had been in a coma following a severe accident and had only recently regained consciousness. Now she was reaching out, hoping to reconnect with the daughter she had lost. "We have to tell Lily," Margaret said softly, sinking into a chair beside Richard's desk. Richard nodded, his face etched with worry. "But how? This will turn her world upside down. She's finally settled, finally feels secure with us. What if she wants to leave?" Margaret reached out, taking Richard's hand in hers. "We have to trust in the bond we've built with her. Whatever happens, we'll face it as a family." They decided to wait until after dinner to break the news to Lily. As they sat around the dining table, picking at their food with little appetite, Lily noticed the tension in the air. "Is everything okay?" she asked, looking from Richard to Margaret with concern. Richard took a deep breath, steeling himself for the conversation ahead. "Lily, sweetheart, we received a letter today. It's from your biological mother." Lily's fork clattered to her plate, her eyes wide with shock. But that's impossible. Mom passed away. She had to go away." Margaret moved to Lily's side, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "It seems there was a misunderstanding, sweetheart. Your mother didn't leave this world. She was in a very deep sleep because of an accident. But she's awake now, and she's looking for you." Lily sat in stunned silence, her mind struggling to process this information. The mother she had mourned, the mother she had said goodbye to, was alive. She felt a whirlwind of emotions, joy, confusion, fear, and a deep, aching sadness she couldn't quite explain. What does this mean?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Richard knelt beside her chair, taking her small hands in his. "It means that you have some decisions to make, Pumpkin. Your biological mother would like to see you, but it's entirely up to you. We'll support whatever choice you make." Lily's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the two people who had become her world. "But you're my parents," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I don't want to leave you." Margaret hugged Lily tightly. "Oh, sweetheart, you don't have to leave us. Nothing will change the fact that we're your parents too. We love you, and that won't change no matter what." As the reality of the situation sank in, Lily found herself torn between the joy of knowing her biological mother was alive and the fear of disrupting the life she had built with the Hawthorns. She retreated to her room, clutching her blue rosary as she had so often in times of trouble. Later that evening, Richard and Margaret gently knocked on Lily's door. They found her sitting on her bed, surrounded by photo albums and mementos of their time together. "Can we come in?" Margaret asked softly. Lily nodded, making room for them on the bed. As they sat down, She looked up at them with tear-stained cheeks. "I'm scared," she admitted. What if she wants me to go with her? What if I have to choose?" Richard pulled Lily into a warm embrace. "Listen to me, Lily. You don't have to choose. Your heart is big enough to love all of us. Meeting your biological mother doesn't mean you have to leave us." Margaret nodded in agreement. "That's right, sweetheart. Family isn't about exclusivity. It's about love, and love only grows when it's shared." Lily considered their words, twirling her rosary beads thoughtfully. Do you think she'll like me?" she asked hesitantly. "Oh, Lily," Margaret said, stroking her hair gently. "She'll love you. How could she not? You're an amazing young girl, and getting to know you will be the greatest joy of her life, just as it has been for us." As the night wore on, they talked through Lily's fears and concerns. They made plans to reach out to Sarah to arrange a meeting on Lily's terms. Throughout the conversation, Richard and Margaret remained steadfast in their support, reminding Lily again and again that their love for her was unconditional. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to peek through the curtains, Lily made her decision. "I want to meet her," she said, her voice tired but resolute. "But I want you both there with me. You're my family too, and I want her to know that." Richard and Margaret hugged Lily tightly, their hearts swelling with love and pride for their brave, compassionate daughter. As Lily drifted off to sleep, emotionally exhausted but feeling more secure in her place in the world, she held her blue rosary close. She sent a quiet prayer of thanks for the family she had found and for the opportunity to expand that family even further. The days ahead would bring new challenges and emotions, but as the Hawthorne family faced this unexpected turn together, they knew that their bond, forged through love, choice, and unwavering support, would only grow stronger. And as the sun rose on a new day, it brought with it the promise of new beginnings, of family circles expanding, and of a love that knew no bounds. The day of Lily's meeting with her biological mother, Sarah, arrived with a mix of anticipation and nervousness that permeated the Hawthorne household. Lily stood in front of her mirror, fidgeting with her clothes and hair, her blue rosary clutched tightly in her hand. Margaret gently knocked on the open door. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice soft and reassuring. Lily turned, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "What if she doesn't like me? What if I don't like her? What if—" Margaret crossed the room and enveloped Lily in a warm hug. "Shh. It's okay to be nervous. Remember, we'll be right there with you. And no matter what happens today, nothing will change how much we love you." Richard appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of calm support despite his own inner turmoil. "That's right, Pumpkin. We're in this together." The drive to the agreed meeting place, a quiet cafe in the city, was filled with a tense silence. Lily sat in the back seat, her hands twisting the fabric of her dress, her eyes fixed on the passing scenery. As they pulled into the parking lot, Richard turned to face Lily. "Remember, you're in control here. If at any point you feel uncomfortable or want to leave, just say the word." Lily nodded, taking a deep breath to steel herself. As they walked into the cafe, her eyes immediately fell on a woman sitting alone at a corner table. The resemblance was unmistakable, the same golden hair, the same delicate features. Sarah. Sarah stood as they approached, her eyes filling with tears as she took in the sight of her daughter. "Lily," she breathed, her voice choked with emotion. "You're so beautiful." Lily felt frozen, overwhelmed by the moment. It was Margaret's gentle hand on her back that gave her the courage to step forward. "Hi," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The next few moments were a blur of introductions and awkward small talk as they all sat down. Sarah couldn't take her eyes off Lily, drinking in every detail of the daughter she had lost. "I'm so sorry," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to leave you. The accident. I didn't know how much time had passed until I woke up." Lily nodded, still too overwhelmed to form words. It was Richard who spoke up, his voice kind but firm. "We understand it was a difficult situation. The important thing is that Lily has been loved and cared for." Sarah turned to Richard and Margaret, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she said earnestly. "Thank you for taking care of my daughter when I couldn't, for giving her a home and a family. As the initial tension began to ease, Lily found her voice. She asked Sarah questions about her life, about the accident, about the years they had lost. In turn, Sarah listened with rapt attention as Lily shared stories of her life with the Hawthorns. As the afternoon wore on, Lily began to relax. She found herself laughing at Sarah's jokes, recognizing little mannerisms that she herself had. It was strange and wonderful all at once. Towards the end of their meeting, Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a small, wrapped package. "I have something for you," she said, sliding it across the table to Lily. "It's not much, but—" Lily carefully unwrapped the gift to reveal a delicate silver locket. Inside was a tiny photograph of Sarah holding a baby Lily. "I've carried this with me every day since I woke up," Sarah explained, "to remind me of what I was fighting to get back to." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes as she closed the locket. She looked up at Sarah, then at Richard and Margaret, her heart full of an emotion she couldn't quite name. "Thank you," she said softly. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she reached for her blue rosary. "This was the last thing you gave me before the accident. It's helped me feel close to you all these years." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, Lily," she whispered. As they prepared to leave, Sarah turned to Richard and Margaret. "I can never thank you enough for what you've done for Lily. I hope we can find a way to all be part of her life." Richard and Margaret exchanged a glance before Margaret spoke. "We'd like that. Lily deserves to have all the love in the world." Outside the cafe, as they said their goodbyes, Lily surprised everyone by stepping forward and giving Sarah a hug. It was brief, but it held the promise of a relationship to be built. On the drive home, Lily was quiet, processing the events of the day. Finally, as they pulled into their driveway, she spoke. "Mom, Dad," she said, her voice small but sure, "I'm glad we did this, but I want you to know, you're still my parents, that hasn't changed." Richard and Margaret felt their hearts swell with love and relief. As they entered their home, they knew that their family had not diminished with Sarah's reappearance, but had instead grown in a beautiful and unexpected way. That night, as Lily lay in bed, she held her new locket in one hand and her blue rosary in the other. She felt a sense of peace wash over her, knowing that she was surrounded by love from all sides. As she drifted off to sleep, she dreamed of a future where all the pieces of her life fit together in perfect harmony. The months following Lily's reunion with Sarah were filled with a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments. The Hawthorns and Sarah worked together to create a new normal, one that allowed Lily to foster a relationship with her biological mother while maintaining the strong bonds she had formed with Richard and Margaret. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of jealousy, confusion, and fear, but through it all, the adults in Lily's life remained committed to putting her needs first. One sunny Saturday afternoon, as summer was just beginning to hint at its arrival, Lily sat in the backyard with Margaret, working on a scrapbook. It had been Sarah's idea, a way for Lily to document her expanding family and the new memories they were creating together. "Mum," Lily said, carefully pasting a photo of herself with Sarah at the zoo into the book, "can I ask you something?" Margaret looked up from where she was cutting colorful paper for borders. "Of course, sweetheart. You can ask me anything." Lily hesitated, her brow furrowed in concentration. Do you ever wish that Sarah hadn't come back? That it was just us like before?" Margaret set down her scissors, giving Lily her full attention. "Oh, Lily," she said softly, "I know this has been a big change for all of us. But no, I don't wish that. Do you know why?" Lily shook her head, her eyes wide and curious. "Because Sarah coming back into your life has brought you so much joy," Margaret explained. "Watching you get to know her, seeing you discover parts of yourself in her, it's been beautiful. Your happiness is what matters most to your father and me." Lily seemed to consider this for a moment. But what if I love her too much? What if there's not enough love left for you and Dad? Margaret pulled Lily into a warm embrace. "Oh, sweetheart, that's not how love works. Love isn't like a pie, where if you give a piece to one person, there's less for others. Love is more like the stars in the sky. No matter how many you count, there are always more to discover. Lily smiled at the analogy, snuggling closer to Margaret. I like that, she said softly, a sky full of love. As they returned to their scrapbooking, Richard joined them in the backyard, carrying a tray of lemonade. How are my two favorite girls doing? He asked, setting the tray down on the patio table. We're creating a sky full of love, Dad, Lily announced, her eyes twinkling. Richard raised an eyebrow, looking to Margaret for explanation. She just smiled and shook her head, mouthing, I'll tell you later. As they sat together, enjoying the lemonade and the warm afternoon sun, the sound of a car pulling up in the driveway caught their attention. Moments later, Sarah appeared around the corner of the house, a picnic basket in her hands. I hope I'm not interrupting, she said, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. I thought maybe we could have a picnic if you'd like. Lily jumped up, her face lighting up with excitement. That's a great idea. Can we, Mum? Dad? Richard and Margaret exchanged a glance, a silent conversation passing between them. Then Margaret smiled warmly at Sarah. That sounds lovely. Why don't you join us out here? We've got lemonade to go with whatever you've brought. As they spread out the picnic blanket and began to unpack the food Sarah had brought, Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest. Here, in this moment, were all the people she loved most in the world, coming together in harmony. The afternoon passed in a blur of laughter, stories, and delicious food. Sarah shared tales of Lily as a baby, causing the girl to blush and giggle. Richard regaled them with the story of Lily's first attempt at chess, which had ended with pieces scattered all over the study floor, and Margaret, with Lily's permission, told Sarah about the gratitude journal and how it had helped Lily adjust to her new life. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the backyard, Lily looked around at her family, her wonderfully complex, beautifully blended family. She realized that her earlier fears had been unfounded. There was more than enough love to go around, and having Sarah in her life didn't diminish her bond with Richard and Margaret. If anything, it had made their family stronger, more resilient. Later that evening, as Lily was getting ready for bed, she heard a gentle knock on her door. Come in, she called. Richard entered, carrying something behind his back. I have a surprise for you, Pumpkin, he said, a smile playing on his lips. Lily sat up in bed, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. What is it, Dad? Richard revealed what he had been hiding, a beautiful dream catcher, its web intricate and adorned with soft feathers and tiny blue beads that matched Lily's rosary. Your mother, Margaret, and I made this for you, Richard explained, hanging the dream catcher above Lily's bed. And look here. He pointed to a small silver charm woven into the center of the web. It was a perfect replica of the locket Sarah had given Lily. We asked Sarah to contribute something too, Richard continued. She chose this charm. She said it represents the unbreakable connection between you two, no matter how much time or distance has separated you. Lily felt tears prick her eyes as she stared at the dream catcher, this beautiful symbol of her blended family's love. It's perfect, she whispered, throwing her arms around Richard. Thank you, Dad, for everything. As Richard hugged her back, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. The journey hadn't been easy, but seeing Lily so happy, so secure in the love of her expanded family, made every challenge worthwhile. That night, as Lily drifted off to sleep beneath her new dream catcher, her blue rosary and silver locket resting side by side on her nightstand, she felt truly and completely at home. Her family might not look like others, but it was hers and it was perfect. And as the moon cast its gentle light through her window, catching the beads of the dream catcher and making them shimmer, Lily dreamed of a future filled with love, understanding, and the unbreakable bonds of family. A family that had been forged not just by blood, but by choice, compassion, and an abundance of love. As summer faded into autumn, bringing with it a crisp chill in the air and a carpet of golden leaves on the Hawthorne estate, Lily found herself facing new challenges. Now in middle school, she was navigating the complex world of preteen social dynamics while also balancing her relationships with her expanded family. One particularly crisp October morning, Lily sat at the breakfast table, pushing her cereal around the bowl without eating. Richard and Margaret exchanged concerned glances over their coffee cups. Is everything all right, Pumpkin? Richard asked gently. Lily sighed, dropping her spoon with a clatter. "There's a father-daughter dance at school next week," she mumbled, not meeting their eyes. Margaret reached out, placing a comforting hand on Lily's arm. "That sounds lovely, sweetheart. Are you excited about it?" Lily's lower lip trembled slightly. "I don't know if I want to go," she admitted. "Some of the girls in my class were talking about it yesterday. They asked who I was going to bring, and when I said I have 2 dads, they looked at me funny." Richard felt his heart constrict at the pain in Lily's voice. He moved to kneel beside her chair, taking her small hands in his. "Lily, look at me," he said softly. When she raised her eyes to meet his, he continued, "Your family might be different from some others, but that doesn't make it any less special or real. If you want to go to that dance, I would be honored to take you." Lily's eyes welled up with tears. "But what about Sarah? And Mom? I don't want anyone to feel left out or hurt." Margaret joined them, wrapping an arm around Lily's shoulders. "Oh, sweetheart, we could never feel hurt by you spending time with any member of your family. We all love you and want you to be happy." Just then, the doorbell rang. Margaret went to answer it, returning moments later with Sarah in tow. They had planned to take Lily shopping for new fall clothes that day. Sarah immediately sensed the tension in the room. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Lily looked up at her biological mother, then back at Richard and Margaret. Suddenly, she burst into tears. "I don't know what to do," she cried. "I love you all so much, but sometimes it's so confusing having so many parents. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or leave anyone out." The 3 adults exchanged glances, their hearts breaking for the young girl they all loved so dearly. It was Sarah who stepped forward, kneeling down next to Richard. "Lily, my sweet girl," she said softly, "having a lot of people who love you is never a bad thing. Yes, it can be complicated sometimes, but it's also a blessing. You don't have to choose between us or worry about hurting our feelings. We're all here for you always." Richard nodded in agreement. "That's right, Pumpkin, and you know what? I have an idea about this dance. Why don't we all go together?" Lily looked up, confusion replacing the tears in her eyes. "All of us? But how?" Margaret smiled, catching on to Richard's idea. "Well, you could have your first dance with Richard, of course, but then maybe you could have a special dance with Sarah too, and I'll be there to cheer you on and take plenty of pictures." Sarah's face lit up at the suggestion. "That sounds wonderful. What do you think, Lily?" Lily looked around at the 3 adults, all watching her with love and understanding in their eyes. Slowly, a smile spread across her face. I think that sounds perfect." The night of the dance arrived, and Lily found herself standing in front of her mirror, twirling in her new dress. It was a beautiful shade of blue that matched her rosary, which she wore around her neck as always. Sarah had done her hair, weaving tiny flowers into her braids, while Margaret had helped her pick out the perfect shoes. As they arrived at the school gymnasium, Lily felt a moment of nervousness. But then she felt Richard's reassuring hand on her shoulder, saw Sarah's encouraging smile, and heard Margaret's whispered, "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Drawing strength from their love, she held her head high and walked into the dance. The evening was magical. Lily danced with Richard, her heart swelling with pride as they twirled around the dance floor. She shared a sweet, slightly awkward, slow dance with Sarah, both of them giggling as they tried to figure out where to put their hands, and throughout it all, Margaret was there, capturing every moment on camera and beaming with joy. As the night drew to a close, Lily found herself surrounded by her classmates, many of whom were curious about her unique family situation. Instead of feeling embarrassed or different, Lily felt a surge of pride as she introduced each of her parents. "This is my dad, Richard," she said, her voice strong and clear. "And this is my mom, Margaret. And this is my biological mom, Sarah. I'm lucky enough to have 3 parents who love me." On the drive home, Lily was unusually quiet, lost in thought. As they pulled into the driveway, she finally spoke up. "Thank you," she said softly. "All of you. For making tonight so special, for loving me so much, for being my family." As they entered the house, all 3 adults enveloped Lily in a group hug. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of their love, Lily knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she had the strength to face them. Because she had not just one, but 3 pillars of support to lean on. That night, as Lily drifted off to sleep, her new dance shoes placed carefully by her bedside and her blue rosary clutched in her hand, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. Her family might be complicated, but it was hers, and it was perfect in its own unique way. And as the moon cast its gentle light through her window, making the dream catcher shimmer, Lily dreamed of future dances, future milestones, and the unwavering love that would guide her through it all. As winter settled over the Hawthorne estate, blanketing the world in a soft white embrace, a different kind of storm was brewing within the family. The delicate balance they had all worked so hard to maintain was about to face its greatest test yet. It began innocuously enough, with a phone call on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Sarah's voice was filled with excitement as she spoke to Lily. "I've been offered an amazing job opportunity," she explained. "It's everything I've ever dreamed of, but it's in California." Lily felt her heart drop. California was on the other side of the country, thousands of miles away from the home she had built with Richard and Margaret. That's great, Sarah," she managed to say, her voice hardly above a whisper. "I know it's far," Sarah continued, sensing Lily's distress. "But I was thinking, maybe you'd like to come with me, just for a while, to see how you like it there. We could have a chance to really get to know each other to make up for lost time." Lily's mind was reeling. Part of her was thrilled at the idea of spending more time with Sarah, of getting to know the mother she had lost for so long. But another part, a larger part, was terrified at the thought of leaving the only real home she had ever known. I don't know," she stammered. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, sweetie," Sarah replied. "Take all the time you need, and talk to Richard and Margaret about it too, okay?" After hanging up, Lily sat on her bed, clutching her blue rosary tightly. How could she possibly make this decision? How could she choose between the mother she was just getting to know and the parents who had given her everything? When she finally gathered the courage to tell Richard and Margaret about Sarah's offer, their reactions were exactly as she had feared. They tried to hide it, but she could see the pain and fear in their eyes. "Well," Richard said, his voice strained as he tried to maintain a neutral tone, "that's certainly a big decision. What do you think about it, Lily?" Lily looked from Richard to Margaret, her heart aching at the thought of leaving them. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice small. "I love you both so much and I don't want to leave. But I feel like I should get to know Sarah better too. I'm so confused." Margaret pulled Lily into a tight hug, "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured, her voice thick with unshed tears. "We love you too, more than you could ever know, and we want you to be happy. Whatever you decide, we'll support you." But as the days passed, the tension in the house grew. Lily could hear Richard and Margaret talking in hushed tones when they thought she couldn't hear. She caught snippets of their conversations, worries about legal custody, fears of losing her, discussions about what was best for Lily's future. Sarah called regularly, painting vivid pictures of life in California, the beaches, the sunshine, the opportunities. But with each call, Lily felt more and more torn. One night, unable to sleep, Lily crept downstairs for a glass of water. As she approached the kitchen, she heard voices. Richard and Margaret were still up, talking. "We can't lose her, Margaret," Richard was saying, his voice filled with anguish. "She's our daughter. We've raised her, loved her." "I know," Margaret replied softly. "But we have to think about what's best for Lily. Maybe she needs this time with Sarah. We can't be selfish." Lily felt her heart breaking. She wanted to run into the kitchen, to throw her arms around them both and promise never to leave. But she remained frozen in place, tears streaming down her face. The next day, Lily asked to speak with all 3 of her parents together. As they gathered in the living room, the tension was palpable. Lily took a deep breath, clutching her blue rosary for strength. "I've made my decision," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I love you all so much, and I'm so grateful for everything you've done for me. But," she paused, looking at each of them in turn, "but I can't go to California. This is my home. You, Richard and Margaret, you're my parents. Sarah, I want to get to know you better. I really do. but I can't leave everything I know behind." The relief on Richard and Margaret's faces was evident, though they tried to hide it. Sarah, to her credit, nodded in understanding, though Lily could see the disappointment in her eyes. "I understand, Lily," Sarah said softly. "And I respect your decision. I'm just glad that you have such a loving home here." In the days that followed, they all worked together to find a compromise. Sarah decided to take the job in California, but promised to visit regularly. They set up weekly video calls and planned for Lily to spend part of her summer vacations in California. As spring began to peek through the last vestiges of winter, Lily stood at the airport with Richard and Margaret saying goodbye to Sarah. As they hugged, Sarah whispered in Lily's ear, "I'm so proud of you, my brave girl. You've grown into such a strong, loving young woman. I may be far away, but I'll always be here for you." Lily felt tears prick her eyes as she hugged Sarah tightly. "I love you," she said. "Thank you for understanding." As they watched Sarah's plane take off, Lily felt Richard and Margaret's arms around her. She leaned into their embrace, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. She had faced her toughest decision yet and had come out stronger for it. That night, as Lily got ready for bed, she paused to look at the dream catcher above her bed, at the locket and rosary side by side on her nightstand. She realized that her family, in all its beautiful complexity, would always be with her, no matter the distance. And as she drifted off to sleep, Lily knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be, home, surrounded by love, with a future full of possibilities stretching out before her. As Lily's 14th birthday approached, the Hawthorne household was abuzz with excitement. Richard and Margaret had been planning a surprise party for weeks, coordinating with Sarah via video calls to ensure she could be part of the celebration, even from a distance. On the morning of her birthday, Lily woke to the smell of pancakes wafting up from the kitchen. She smiled, remembering how this had been a tradition since her first birthday with the Hawthorns. As she made her way downstairs, she was greeted by the sight of Richard at the stove, flipping pancakes with exaggerated flair while Margaret set the table. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," they chorused as she entered the kitchen. Lily's face broke into a wide grin as she hugged them both. "Thank you," she said, her voice muffled against Richard's shoulder. As they sat down to breakfast, Margaret placed a small wrapped package next to Lily's plate. "This came for you yesterday," she explained. "It's from Sarah." Lily carefully unwrapped the gift to reveal a beautiful leather-bound journal. Inside the cover, Sarah had written a note. "My dearest Lily, as you begin your 14th year, I want you to have a place to record your thoughts, dreams, and memories. Your story is unique and beautiful, just like you. Never forget where you came from, but always look forward to where you're going. All my love, Sarah." Lily felt tears prick her eyes as she ran her fingers over the smooth leather. "It's perfect," she whispered. Later that afternoon, as Lily was getting ready for what she thought was a small family dinner, Richard called her into his study. He seemed uncharacteristically nervous as he gestured for her to sit down. "Lily," he began, his voice serious, "there's something I need to talk to you about, something I should have told you a long time ago." Lily felt a knot of anxiety form in her stomach. "What is it, Dad?" Richard took a deep breath. "Do you remember when we first met? When you came to our door that New Year's Eve?" Lily nodded, her hand instinctively going to the blue rosary around her neck. "Well," Richard continued, "I never told you the whole story of why I recognized your mother in that photograph." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "You see, Sarah and we were more than just friends. We were in love once upon a time." Lily's eyes widened in shock. "What? But why didn't you tell me?" Richard's eyes were filled with regret. "I was afraid, Lily, afraid of complicating things, afraid of hurting Margaret. But I realize now that I should have been honest with you from the beginning." As Richard went on to explain the full story of his relationship with Sarah, how they had drifted apart, and how he had never known about Lily's existence, Lily felt as if the world was shifting beneath her feet. Everything she thought she knew about her past was changing. "Does Mom know?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Richard nodded. "Yes. I told her everything when we decided to adopt you. She's been incredibly understanding and supportive. Lily sat in silence for a moment, processing this new information. Then, slowly, she stood up and walked around the desk. Richard looked up at her, uncertainty in his eyes. Without a word, Lily wrapped her arms around him in a tight hug. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. "It doesn't change anything. You're still my dad, and I love you." Richard hugged her back, relief washing over him. "I love you too, Pumpkin. More than you could ever know." As they left the study together, Lily was surprised to find the house dark and quiet. But as soon as she stepped into the living room, the lights flicked on and a chorus of "surprise" rang out. The room was filled with friends and family, all there to celebrate Lily's birthday. And there on the big screen TV was Sarah, joining the party via video call. As Lily looked around at all the people who loved her, she felt a warmth spread through her chest. Her family might be complicated, her past might be full of twists and turns, but one thing was certain: she was loved, completely and unconditionally. The party was a joyous affair, filled with laughter, cake, and heartfelt toasts. As the evening wound down, Lily found a quiet moment to talk to Sarah via the video call. "Thank you for the journal," she said, holding it up for Sarah to see. "It's beautiful." Sarah smiled warmly. "I'm so glad you like it, sweetheart. I hope you'll use it to write your own story." Lily nodded, then took a deep breath. "Sarah, Dad told me about your history together." Sarah's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "Oh, Lily, I'm sorry you had to find out like this. I hope you understand why we didn't tell you sooner." "I do," Lily assured her. "It's okay. I'm just glad to know the truth now." As they continued to talk, Lily felt a sense of completeness wash over her. The missing pieces of her past were finally falling into place, creating a fuller, richer picture of who she was and where she came from. That night, as the house quieted and the last of the guests left, Lily sat on her bed, her new journal open in her lap. She began to write, pouring out her thoughts and feelings about the day's revelations. As she wrote, she realized that her unique family situation, which had once felt like a burden, was actually a blessing. She had not one but 3 parents who loved her fiercely. She had a past that was complex and interesting, and a future full of possibilities. Lily closed the journal, a sense of peace settling over her. She may not have had a conventional family, but she had something far more precious, a tapestry of love, woven from threads of biology, choice, and unwavering commitment. As she drifted off to sleep, her blue rosary in one hand and her new journal in the other, Lily felt truly and completely at home in her own skin, in her own story, and she couldn't wait to see what the next chapter would bring. As spring blossomed into summer, Lily found herself standing on the precipice of a new adventure. Her freshman year of high school was looming on the horizon, bringing with it a mix of excitement and trepidation. But before that, she had a journey of a different kind to undertake, her annual summer visit to Sarah in California. The night before her departure, Lily sat on her bed surrounded by half-packed suitcases. Margaret knocked gently on the open door, a warm smile on her face. "Need any help, sweetheart?" she asked, taking in the chaos of clothes and books strewn across the room. Lily nodded gratefully, and Margaret came to sit beside her on the bed. As they folded clothes and packed them away, a comfortable silence settled between them. Finally, Lily spoke, her voice soft and hesitant. "Mum, can I ask you something?" Margaret looked up, sensing the seriousness in Lily's tone. "Of course, honey. You can ask me anything." Lily took a deep breath. "How do you do it? How are you so okay with everything? With me spending time with Sarah, with Dad's history with her, with all of it?" Margaret set down the shirt she was folding and turned to face Lily fully. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her voice filled with love and understanding. "It hasn't always been easy, but you know what makes it all worthwhile? You." She reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. "Seeing you grow, seeing you loved by so many people, that's a gift. And Sarah, she's not competition. She's a partner in raising this amazing young woman you're becoming." Lily felt tears prick her eyes as she leaned into Margaret's embrace. "I love you, Mum," she whispered. I love you too, sweetheart. Always and forever. The next morning, as Lily prepared to board her flight to California, she found herself enveloped in a group hug with Richard and Margaret. "Remember," Richard said, his voice gruff with emotion, "you can call us anytime, day or night." "And have fun," Margaret added, "but not too much fun. We want you back, you know." Lily laughed, squeezing them both tightly. "I'll be back before you know it," she promised. As she settled into her seat on the plane, Lily pulled out her journal, the one Sarah had given her for her birthday. She began to write, pouring out her thoughts and feelings about the journey ahead. The 2 weeks in California passed in a whirlwind of beaches, museums, and long conversations with Sarah. Lily found herself opening up more than ever before, sharing her hopes and fears for the future. One evening, as they sat on the beach watching the sunset, Sarah turned to Lily with a serious expression. "Lily," she began, "I want you to know how proud I am of you. You've handled this unconventional family situation with such grace and maturity." Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest at Sarah's words. "Thanks," she said softly. "It hasn't always been easy, but I wouldn't change it. I love our family, all of it." Sarah smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm so glad to hear that, because I have something to tell you." She took a deep breath. "I've been offered a job back east. It's not exactly in your hometown, but it's close enough that I could see you more often, be more present in your life, if that's something you'd want." Lily's eyes widened in surprise. "Really? You'd do that? For me?" Sarah nodded. "For you, and for me too. These past few years, getting to know you, being part of your life even from a distance, it's made me realize what I've been missing. If you're comfortable with it, I'd like to be closer, to be more involved in your day-to-day life." Lily felt a surge of emotions, joy, excitement, and a touch of anxiety. "What about Richard and Margaret?" she asked. "Have you talked to them about this?" "I have," Sarah assured her. "They're supportive of the idea as long as it's what you want. We all agree that your happiness and well-being come first." Lily sat in silence for a moment, watching the sun sink below the horizon. Then slowly a smile spread across her face. "I'd like that," she said. "I'd like that a lot." The rest of the vacation was filled with plans and dreams for the future. When Lily boarded her flight back home, it was with a heart full of excitement for what lay ahead. As she walked through the arrival gate, she saw Richard and Margaret waiting for her, their faces lighting up as they caught sight of her. Lily ran to them, throwing her arms around them both. "Welcome home, Pumpkin," Richard said, his voice warm with affection. "Did you have a good time?" Margaret asked, smoothing Lily's hair. Lily nodded enthusiastically. "The best, and wait until you hear the news." Over dinner that night, Lily shared Sarah's plans to move closer. To her relief and joy, Richard and Margaret were genuinely supportive and excited. "This is your family, Lily," Margaret said, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "All of us. And we're stronger together." As summer drew to a close and the first day of high school approached, Lily found herself feeling more confident and secure than ever before. She had faced challenges, navigated complex emotions, and emerged stronger for it. The night before her first day of high school, Lily stood in front of her mirror, taking in her reflection. She was no longer the scared little girl who had shown up on the Hawthorns' doorstep all those years ago. She was a young woman, shaped by love, resilience, and the unwavering support of her unconventional but beautiful family. She reached for her blue rosary, clasping it around her neck. It was no longer just a link to her past, but a symbol of her journey, of the bridges she had built between her past, present, and future. As she crawled into bed that night, Lily felt a sense of peace wash over her. Whatever challenges high school might bring, whatever twists and turns lay ahead in her journey, she knew one thing for certain. She had a family who loved her, supported her, and would stand by her through it all. And with that comforting thought, Lily drifted off to sleep, ready to embrace the next chapter of her remarkable life story. The halls of Westview High School buzzed with the energy of a new school year. For Lily Hawthorne, now a sophomore, the nervous excitement of her freshman year had given way to a quiet confidence. She navigated the crowded corridors with ease, exchanging greetings with friends and classmates. As she approached her locker, a familiar voice called out, "Lily, wait up!" Turning, Lily saw her best friend, Emma, hurrying towards her. The two girls had bonded over their shared love of art and their experiences with unconventional families. Emma had two mums. "Hey, Em!" Lily greeted her friend with a warm hug. "How was your summer?" As they chatted about their vacations and compared schedules, Lily felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find herself face to face with Jason, a boy from her English class. Lily felt her heart skip a beat. She had harbored a secret crush on Jason since freshman year. "Hi, Lily," Jason said, a shy smile on his face. "I was wondering if you'd like to partner up for the art project Mr. Collins announced. I remember how amazing your work was last year." Lily felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "Sure, I'd love to," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. As Jason walked away, Emma nudged Lily with a knowing grin. "Someone's got a crush," she teased in a sing-song voice. Lily playfully swatted her friend's arm. "Shh, it's not like that," she protested, but her pink cheeks told a different story. The school day flew by in a blur of new classes and reunions with friends. As Lily walked home, her mind was full of possibilities for the year ahead. She was so lost in thought that she almost missed the moving truck parked in front of the house next door to hers. Curiosity piqued, Lily watched as movers carried boxes and furniture into the house. Then, she saw a familiar figure directing the movers, Sarah. Lily's eyes widened in surprise. She knew Sarah had been planning to move closer, but she hadn't realized it would be right next door. A mix of emotions washed over her, excitement, nervousness, and a touch of anxiety about how this change would affect her family dynamic. Taking a deep breath, Lily approached the house. "Sarah," she called out. Sarah turned, her face lighting up at the sight of Lily. "Surprise," she said, opening her arms for a hug. "I wanted to tell you, but I thought it would be more fun this way." As they embraced, Lily felt a sense of warmth and rightness. "I can't believe you're going to be living right next door," she said, her voice filled with wonder. Sarah's smile faltered slightly. "Is that okay? I know it's a big change. If it's too much too soon, I can look for another place." Lily shook her head emphatically. "No, it's perfect. It's just a lot to take in." They spent the next hour exploring Sarah's new house, with Lily offering suggestions for decoration and Sarah sharing her plans for the space. As they talked and laughed, Lily felt the last of her anxiety melt away. This felt right, like another piece of her life falling into place. When Lily finally returned home, she found Richard and Margaret in the kitchen preparing dinner. They looked up as she entered, their faces expectant. "So," Richard said, trying to sound casual, "I see Sarah's moving in next door." Lily nodded, studying their faces for any signs of discomfort or jealousy. To her relief, she saw only warmth and a hint of amusement. "Are you okay with this?" Margaret asked gently. "We knew about Sarah's plans, but we wanted her to be the one to tell you." Lily felt a rush of love for her parents. Their constant consideration for her feelings never failed to touch her heart. "I'm more than okay," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "It feels right, you know, like our family is finally complete." Richard and Margaret exchanged a glance, their eyes shining with pride and love. "We're glad you feel that way, Pumpkin," Richard said, pulling Lily into a hug. As they sat down to dinner, the conversation flowed easily, filled with plans for welcoming Sarah to the neighborhood and excitement for the school year ahead. Lily felt a sense of contentment wash over her. Her family might not look like others, but it was perfect in its own unique way. Later that night, as Lily got ready for bed, she paused to look out her window. She could see a light on in Sarah's new house, a warm glow in the darkness. Smiling to herself, she reached for her journal, the one Sarah had given her, and began to write. "Dear Journal, today marks the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Sarah moving in next door feels like the final piece of a puzzle falling into place. I used to worry about having too many parents, about not fitting in, but now I see that I'm not divided between them. I'm multiplied. My capacity for love has grown, not diminished. As I start this new school year, I feel stronger and more confident than ever before. I have a family that supports me, friends who understand me, and a future full of possibilities. I don't know what challenges lie ahead, but I know I have the strength to face them. My blue rosary reminds me of where I came from, and my journal helps me dream about where I'm going. I'm Lily Hawthorne, daughter of Richard and Margaret, daughter of Sarah, and I'm ready for whatever comes next. As Lily closed her journal and turned out the light, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. Whatever the future held, she knew she had the love and support of her unique, beautiful family to guide her through. And with that comforting thought, she drifted off to sleep, ready to embrace the next chapter of her extraordinary life. As autumn painted the world in hues of gold and crimson, life in the Hawthorne household settled into a new rhythm. Sarah's presence next door had quickly become a natural part of their daily lives. Family dinners often expanded to include her, and Lily found herself cherishing the moments when all three of her parents were together, their laughter filling the air. However, as with any significant change, there were challenges to navigate. Lily sometimes felt torn between her two homes, worried about spending too much time with one parent and not enough with another. Despite the reassurances from all sides that there was no need to keep score, Lily couldn't help but feel the weight of trying to balance her time and affection. One crisp October afternoon, Lily sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen with growing frustration. She was working on her art project with Jason, and they had decided to create a digital collage representing their families. But as Lily tried to arrange the photos and symbols that represented her complex family structure, she found herself struggling. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, grateful for the distraction. Sarah poked her head in, a warm smile on her face. "Hey, sweetie, I thought you might need a study break. Want to go for a walk?" Lily glanced at her unfinished project, then back at Sarah. "I don't know, I really should finish this." "Come on," Sarah encouraged. "A little fresh air might help clear your head. Plus, I have something I want to talk to you about." Intrigued, Lily agreed. As they walked through the neighborhood, admiring the autumn foliage, Sarah seemed uncharacteristically nervous. "Lily," she began hesitantly, "I wanted to talk to you about something important. You see, I've been seeing someone romantically." Lily felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. "Oh," she said, her voice small. "For how long?" "A few months now," Sarah admitted. "His name is David. He's a kind man and he knows all about our unique family situation. I'd really like for you to meet him." Lily walked in silence for a moment, processing this new information. Part of her was happy that Sarah had found someone, but another part felt a strange sense of betrayal. It was irrational, she knew, but she couldn't help feeling like this David person was intruding on their carefully balanced family dynamic. "Lily?" Sarah prompted gently. "What are you thinking?" Lily took a deep breath. I don't know," she admitted. "It's a lot to take in. Does it have to change anything?" Sarah stopped walking and turned to face Lily, her eyes filled with understanding. "Oh, sweetheart, nothing could ever change how much I love you or how important you are to me. David isn't a replacement for anyone in our family. He'd be an addition, only if you're comfortable with it." Lily nodded slowly, but her mind was whirling. As they walked back home, she felt a growing unease in the pit of her stomach. That evening, as Lily picked at her dinner, Richard and Margaret exchanged concerned glances. "Is everything all right, Pumpkin?" Richard asked gently. Lily looked up, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "Did you know?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "About Sarah's friend?" Understanding dawned on their faces. Margaret reached out, placing a comforting hand on Lily's arm. "We knew she was seeing someone, yes, but we thought it should come from her." Lily felt a surge of irrational anger. "So everyone knew except me? Am I the last to know everything in this family?" "Lily," Richard began, his voice calm but firm, "that's not fair. We all respect your relationship with Sarah, and we thought it was important for her to tell you herself." Lily pushed her chair back abruptly, standing up. "I need some air," she muttered, rushing out of the house before anyone could stop her. She found herself walking aimlessly through the neighborhood, her thoughts in turmoil. As she passed by Sarah's house, she saw an unfamiliar car in the driveway. Through the window, she caught a glimpse of Sarah laughing with a man she assumed must be David. The sight sent a pang through Lily's heart. She turned away quickly, picking up her pace until she was almost running. She ended up at the local park, collapsing onto a swing as tears began to fall. As she sat there gently swinging back and forth, Lily tried to untangle the knot of emotions in her chest. She wasn't just upset about Sarah dating. She realized she was afraid of change, afraid of losing the delicate balance they had all worked so hard to achieve. Lost in her thoughts, Lily didn't notice the approaching footsteps until a familiar voice called out, "I thought I might find you here." Looking up, Lily saw Margaret approaching, concern etched on her face. Without a word, Margaret sat on the swing next to her, waiting patiently for Lily to speak. "I don't know why I'm so upset," Lily finally said, her voice choked with emotion. "I should be happy for Sarah, right?" Margaret reached out, taking Lily's hand in hers. "It's okay to have mixed feelings, sweetheart. Change can be scary, especially when it comes to family." Lily nodded, grateful for her mother's understanding. I feel like I'm being replaced. Like there won't be room for me anymore." "Oh, Lily," Margaret said softly, "that could never happen. Love doesn't work that way. It's not a finite resource that gets used up. It grows and expands to include new people without diminishing what's already there." As they talked, Lily felt the knot in her chest begin to loosen. Margaret's words, filled with wisdom and unconditional love, helped her see the situation from a new perspective. By the time they walked home hand in hand, Lily felt a sense of calm settling over her. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, adjustments to be made, but she also knew that she had the strength to face them, supported by the unwavering love of her unique family. That night, as Lily got ready for bed, she paused to look at the photos on her dresser. There was one of her with Richard and Margaret, another with Sarah, and in the center a group photo from her birthday with all three of her parents. Smiling to herself, she realized there was room for more. More photos, more love, more family. She reached for her journal, feeling the need to sort through her thoughts on paper. "Dear Journal, today was hard. I felt scared and angry when I learned about Sarah dating someone new, but talking with Mom Margaret helped me see things differently. Our family has never been conventional, so why should it start now? I realize that my fear of being replaced is just that, a fear, not reality. The love in our family has only grown over time. It's expanded to include new relationships and deeper connections. Maybe it can expand again to include David, if he turns out to be as nice as Sarah says. I'm still nervous about meeting him, but I'm going to try to keep an open mind. After all, our family has taught me that love is about choices, choosing to care, to support, to be there for each other. And I choose to trust in the strength of our family bonds. Tomorrow, I'll talk to Sarah. I'll apologize for running off and tell her I'm willing to meet David. It might not be easy, but nothing worth having ever is. My blue rosary reminds me of where I've been, and this journal helps me make sense of where I'm going. I'm Lily Hawthorne, daughter of 3 amazing parents, and I'm ready to face whatever comes next, together." As Lily closed her journal and turned out the light, she felt a renewed sense of peace. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, more moments of doubt and fear, but she also knew that she had the love and support of her family, in all its beautiful, complex, ever-expanding glory, to guide her through. And with that comforting thought, she drifted off to sleep, ready to face tomorrow with an open heart and mind. The crisp autumn air carried a sense of anticipation as Lily stood on Sarah's front porch, her hand poised to knock. She took a deep breath, steadying her nerves before rapping gently on the door. Today was the day she would meet David, Sarah's boyfriend, and despite her resolve to keep an open mind, butterflies danced in her stomach. Sarah opened the door, her face lighting up at the sight of Lily. "Hi, sweetheart, come on in," she said warmly, ushering Lily inside. As they entered the living room, Lily saw a man rise from the couch. He was tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile that immediately put her at ease. "You must be Lily," he said, extending his hand. "I'm David. I've heard so much about you." Lily shook his hand, surprised by the strength of his grip. "It's nice to meet you," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The afternoon unfolded in a series of getting-to-know-you conversations. David, it turned out, was an environmental lawyer with a passion for photography. As he showed Lily some of his nature photos, she found herself genuinely interested, asking questions about his techniques and favorite subjects. "You know," David said, a twinkle in his eye, "I've been thinking about teaching a photography class at the community center. Would you be interested in joining?" Lily's eyes lit up at the prospect. She had always been drawn to art, but had never explored photography. "Really? That sounds amazing." Sarah watched their interaction with a mixture of joy and relief. As the afternoon wore on, she could see Lily relaxing, her initial hesitation giving way to genuine engagement. As Lily prepared to leave, David surprised her by handing her a small package. "A little welcome to the family gift," he explained with a smile. Lily carefully unwrapped it to reveal a beautiful vintage-style camera. She looked up at David, her eyes wide with surprise and gratitude. "This is... wow. Thank you so much." On the walk home, Lily's mind was buzzing with thoughts and emotions. David had been nothing like she'd feared. He was kind, thoughtful, and seemed to genuinely care about becoming a part of their family, not replacing anyone. As she entered her house, she found Richard and Margaret in the kitchen, trying and failing to look nonchalant. "So," Margaret said, attempting a casual tone, "how did it go?" Lily couldn't help but smile at their poorly disguised concern. "It was actually really nice," she admitted. "David's pretty cool. He gave me this camera and invited me to join his photography class." Richard and Margaret exchanged relieved glances. "That's wonderful, Pumpkin," Richard said, pulling Lily into a hug. "We're so proud of how maturely you're handling all of this." Over the next few weeks, Lily threw herself into learning photography. She spent hours experimenting with her new camera, capturing everything from the changing leaves in the backyard to candid moments of her family's daily life. One evening, as she was reviewing her photos on her computer, she paused on an image that took her breath away. It was a group shot from a recent family dinner. Richard and Margaret on one side of the table, Sarah and David on the other, and Lily in the middle, her face alight with laughter. The photo captured perfectly the warmth and love that surrounded her. Inspired, Lily returned to her art project with Jason with renewed enthusiasm. She incorporated some of her photos into the digital collage, creating a vibrant representation of her unique family. When she presented it in class, she spoke with confidence about her 3 parents and the new additions to her family circle. As the holidays approached, Lily found herself looking forward to, rather than dreading, the prospect of incorporating David into their traditions. She even suggested inviting him to their annual Christmas Eve dinner. On Christmas Eve, as they all gathered around the table, Richard, Margaret, Sarah, David, and Lily, there was a moment when Lily looked around and felt a surge of emotion so strong it nearly overwhelmed her. This was her family in all its beautiful complexity. Later that night, as she got ready for bed, Lily reached for her journal. "Dear journal, tonight was amazing. Seeing everyone together laughing and sharing stories, it made me realize how lucky I am. I used to worry that expanding our family would mean less love to go around, but I was so wrong. It's like Mom, Margaret, said, love doesn't divide, it multiplies. David has become such a positive part of our lives. He doesn't try to replace anyone. He just adds his own unique presence to our family tapestry. And the best part is, I can see how happy he makes Sarah. Her eyes light up when he's around in a way I've never seen before. I'm starting to understand that family isn't about blood or even about who raises you. It's about love, choice, and commitment. It's about showing up for each other, supporting each other, and making room for new love without diminishing the old. As I look at the photos I've taken over the past few weeks, candid shots of all of us together, I see a story of love, growth, and resilience. We've faced challenges, sure, but we've faced them together, and we've come out stronger for it. My blue rosary still reminds me of where I came from, but now I have these photos to show me where I am and where I'm going. I'm Lily Hawthorne, daughter of Richard and Margaret and Sarah, friend of David. and I can't wait to see what the new year brings for our wonderfully unconventional family." As Lily closed her journal and turned out the light, she felt a sense of peace and excitement for the future. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, more adjustments to make. But she also knew that she had the strength and support to face whatever came her way. And with that comforting thought, she drifted off to sleep, the sounds of laughter and love from the gathering downstairs serving as a perfect lullaby. As winter melted into spring, change was in the air for the Hawthorne family. Lily, now halfway through her sophomore year, found herself facing new challenges and opportunities both at school and at home. One sunny Saturday morning, as Lily was setting up her camera for a photo shoot in the backyard, she heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Curious, she peeked around the corner of the house to see Sarah and David emerging from David's car, their faces alight with excitement. "Lily," Sarah called out, waving her over, "we have some news to share." As Lily approached, she noticed Sarah's left hand, specifically the glittering ring on her fourth finger. Her eyes widened in realization. Are you engaged?" she asked, her voice a mix of surprise and uncertainty. Sarah and David exchanged a loving glance before Sarah nodded, her smile radiant. "Yes, we are. David proposed last night. We wanted you to be the first to know." Lily stood frozen for a moment, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through her. Joy for Sarah's happiness warred with a sudden fear of change. What would this mean for their family dynamic? Sensing Lily's conflicted emotions, David stepped forward. "Lily," he said gently, "I want you to know that this doesn't change anything about your relationship with Sarah. If anything, I hope it means that I can be one more person in your corner, supporting you and cheering you on." Lily nodded slowly, processing his words. She looked at Sarah, seeing the mixture of happiness and nervous anticipation in her eyes. Taking a deep breath, Lily made a decision. She stepped forward and hugged them both. "Congratulations," she said sincerely. "I'm happy for you, really." The relief on Sarah and David's faces was palpable. As they began to discuss initial wedding plans, Lily found herself genuinely excited about the prospect of being involved in the ceremony. Later that day, as Lily shared the news with Richard and Margaret, she was struck by their immediate and genuine happiness for Sarah. There was no jealousy, no resentment, just joy for a member of their unconventional family finding love. "You know," Margaret said thoughtfully, "this is a beautiful example of how love expands, not divides. Sarah finding happiness with David doesn't diminish her love for you or our family in any way." Richard nodded in agreement. "That's right, Pumpkin. And it doesn't change our family, it just makes it a little bigger, a little richer." Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest at their words. She was continually amazed by the capacity for love and understanding that her parents demonstrated. As spring progressed, wedding preparations began in earnest. Lily threw herself into helping, using her newfound photography skills to create a beautiful engagement photo album for Sarah and David. She even volunteered to be the unofficial wedding photographer, a role that Sarah and David enthusiastically accepted. One afternoon, as Lily was helping Sarah address wedding invitations, a thought occurred to her. "Sarah," she began hesitantly, "after you and David get married, should I call him Dad too?" Sarah set down her pen, giving Lily her full attention. "Oh, sweetheart," she said softly, "that's entirely up to you. David would be honored, I'm sure, but he also understands that you have a wonderful father in Richard. There's no pressure either way." Lily nodded, relieved by Sarah's understanding. I think I'll stick with David for now, but maybe that could change someday." Sarah smiled, reaching out to squeeze Lily's hand. "That's perfect. You know, Lily, I'm so proud of how you've handled all of this. Your maturity and open-heartedness never cease to amaze me." As the wedding day approached, Lily found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them all to this point. She thought about the scared little girl she had once been, alone on the streets, and marveled at the life she now had, surrounded by love, supported by not just 2, but 5 adults who cared deeply for her. The night before the wedding, Lily sat at her desk, her camera beside her, and opened her journal. Dear journal, tomorrow our family grows again. Sarah and David are getting married, and I find myself filled with an excitement I never expected to feel. It's strange to think about how much I once feared this change, how I worried it might mean losing something. Instead, I've gained so much. David has become a true friend and mentor. His passion for photography has opened up a whole new world for me, and his kindness has shown me that there's always room for more love in a family. As I look at the photos I've taken over the past few months, candid shots of dress fittings, cake tastings, and quiet moments of Sarah and David simply being together, I see a story of love and new beginnings. But I also see the constant presence of my parents, Richard and Margaret, their unwavering support a foundation for all of this joy. I've realized that family isn't a fixed thing. It's fluid, expanding and changing, but always rooted in love and choice. Tomorrow, as I stand with my camera, capturing the moments of Sarah and David's wedding, I'll also be capturing the next chapter of our family's story. My blue rosary still hangs around my neck, a reminder of where I came from. But now it's joined by my camera strap, a symbol of where I'm going. I'm Lily Hawthorne, daughter of Richard and Margaret and Sarah, friend of David, and maybe someday daughter to him too, and I can't wait to see what beautiful moments tomorrow brings. As Lily closed her journal and began to pack her camera bag for the wedding, she felt a sense of peace and excitement. She knew that tomorrow would bring changes, but she also knew that the core of her family, the love, support, and understanding that had brought them all together, would remain constant. And with that comforting thought, she drifted off to sleep, dreaming of the new memories waiting to be made and the new chapters waiting to be written in their ever-expanding family story. The day of Sarah and David's wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect spring day filled with promise. Lily woke early, her excitement palpable as she carefully packed her camera gear. Today, she would not only witness the union of two people she had grown to love, but she would also capture the memories for their entire family. As she made her way downstairs, Lily found Richard and Margaret in the kitchen, already dressed for the wedding. The sight of them, Richard adjusting Margaret's necklace with tender care, made Lily's heart swell with love. "Good morning, Pumpkin," Richard said, his eyes crinkling with a warm smile. "Ready for the big day?" Lily nodded, her own smile radiant. "I can't believe it's finally here. It feels like just yesterday that Sarah moved in next door, and now—" Margaret pulled Lily into a tight hug. "And now our family grows again. It's beautiful, isn't it?" As they drove to the venue, a picturesque garden on the outskirts of town, Lily felt a sense of anticipation building. This wasn't just Sarah and David's day. It was a celebration of their entire unconventional, loving family. The ceremony was everything Lily had hoped it would be and more. She moved quietly around the edges, her camera capturing every precious moment. Sarah, radiant in her flowing white dress. David, his eyes shining with love and joy, and all around them, the faces of their friends and family, each one a thread in the intricate tapestry of their lives. As Sarah and David exchanged vows, Lily felt tears prick her eyes. She lowered her camera for a moment, simply taking in the scene. Richard and Margaret sat in the front row, their hands clasped together, proud smiles on their faces. And there, in that moment, Lily saw the true meaning of family, not defined by blood or tradition, but by love, choice, and unwavering support. The reception was a joyous affair, filled with laughter, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. As the evening wore on, Lily found herself pulled into a quiet moment with Sarah and David. "We have something for you," Sarah said, her eyes twinkling with excitement. She handed Lily a small, beautifully wrapped package. Lily carefully opened it to reveal a delicate silver charm in the shape of a camera. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "We thought you could add it to your rosary," David explained, "a symbol of this new chapter in our lives and of the beautiful way you've captured our family's journey." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes as she hugged them both. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." As the night drew to a close, Lily found herself standing at the edge of the dance floor, her camera forgotten for the moment as she watched her family, all of them, laughing and dancing together. Richard and Margaret, Sarah and David, and all the friends and extended family members who had become part of their circle. In that moment, Lily felt a profound sense of belonging. She realized that the fear she had once felt, of change, of not having enough love to go around, had been completely unfounded. Love, she now understood, was not a finite resource. It grew and expanded, making room for new connections without diminishing the old. Later that night, as Lily uploaded the photos from the wedding onto her computer, she paused on one particular image. It was a group shot of all of them together: Richard, Margaret, Sarah, David, and Lily in the center. Their faces were alight with joy, their arms around each other in a tight embrace. This, Lily thought, was the true picture of family. Not perfect, not conventional, but real and loving and strong. And, with a smile, she reached for her journal one last time. Dear Journal, today was more than just a wedding. It was a celebration of love in all its forms: romantic love, parental love, the love between friends and family. As I watched Sarah and David say their vows, as I danced with Richard and Margaret, as I hugged Sarah and welcomed David officially into our family, I felt a sense of completion. Our family's journey has been unconventional, filled with surprises and challenges. But every step of the way, we've chosen love. We've chosen to open our hearts, to make room for new relationships without diminishing the old ones. I used to think that family was something you were born into, something fixed and unchangeable, but now I know better. Family is something you build day by day, choice by choice. It's held together not by blood, but by love, understanding, and the willingness to stand by each other through all of life's ups and downs. As I look at the photos from today, I see more than just smiling faces. I see our family's story, a story of hope, of second chances, of love that knows no boundaries. My blue rosary, now adorned with the camera charm from Sarah and David, is a perfect symbol of this journey. It connects my past to my present and future, a constant reminder of where I've been and the amazing places I have yet to go. I am Lily Hawthorne, daughter of Richard and Margaret, daughter of Sarah, friend and soon-to-be stepdaughter of David. I am a photographer, a student, a dreamer, and I am loved, completely and unconditionally, by a family that defies definition but never fails to support and cherish me. As this chapter of our lives comes to a close, I find myself excited for what comes next, because I know that whatever challenges we face, whatever joys we celebrate, we'll face them together, as a family. Lily closed her journal, a sense of peace settling over her. As she drifted off to sleep, the sounds of laughter and love from the wedding still echoing in her mind, she knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be, surrounded by a love that knew no bounds, part of a family that had chosen her, just as she had chosen them. And in that knowledge, she found strength, joy, and the promise of a beautiful future. 5 years had passed since Sarah and David's wedding, and the Hawthorne family had continued to grow and evolve. Lily, now a poised and confident young woman in her early 20s, stood in front of the full-length mirror in her childhood bedroom, adjusting the cap on her head. Today was her college graduation day, a milestone she had once thought impossible during her years on the streets. As she smoothed down her gown, her eyes caught sight of the blue rosary hanging from the corner of the mirror, the small camera charm glinting in the morning light. She smiled, reaching out to touch it gently. So much had changed, and yet this symbol of her journey remained a constant, a reminder of where she had come from and how far she had come. A soft knock on the door interrupted her reverie. "Come in," she called, turning to see Richard and Margaret enter the room, their faces beaming with pride. "Oh, Lily," Margaret breathed, her eyes misting over. "You look beautiful." Richard nodded in agreement, his voice gruff with emotion. "We are so proud of you, Pumpkin. So very proud." Lily felt a lump form in her throat as she hugged them both tightly. "I couldn't have done it without you," she whispered. "Thank you for everything." As they made their way downstairs, Lily was greeted by the sight of Sarah and David waiting in the living room. Sarah's eyes lit up as she saw Lily in her cap and gown. "There's our graduate," she exclaimed, pulling Lily into a warm embrace. David, who had become every bit the father figure Lily had hoped for, smiled warmly. "Congratulations, Lily. Your thesis on the power of family unconventional structures in modern society was brilliant. I have no doubt it will make a real impact." Lily felt a rush of gratitude for this man who had embraced her as his own, who had supported her academic pursuits with genuine interest and encouragement. "Thanks, David," she said sincerely. "That means a lot coming from you." As they all piled into cars to head to the graduation ceremony, Lily found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about the scared little girl she had once been, clutching a blue rosary and dreaming of a family to call her own. She thought about the twists and turns, the challenges and triumphs that had shaped her life. The graduation ceremony was a blur of emotions. As Lily walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she heard the cheers of her family, all 5 of them, rising above the crowd. In that moment, she felt invincible, buoyed by their love and support. After the ceremony, as they gathered for photos, Lily insisted on taking one with her camera, set on a timer. She wanted to capture this moment herself, to add it to the visual story of their family that she had been documenting for years. As they all squeezed together, arms around each other, smiles radiant, Lily felt a profound sense of belonging. This was her family, unconventional, complex, and more loving than she could have ever imagined. Later that evening, as they all sat around the dinner table in the Hawthorne home sharing stories and laughter, Lily stood up, tapping her glass gently with a spoon. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to her. "I wanted to say something," she began, her voice steady despite the emotion welling up inside her. "Today isn't just about my graduation. It's about all of us, about the journey we've taken together." She looked around the table, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "Richard, Margaret, you took in a scared, homeless little girl and gave her a home. You showed me what it means to be parents, to love unconditionally. Sarah, you came back into my life and showed me that second chances are possible, that love can overcome any obstacle. And David, you taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about choice. You chose to love me as your own, and I am so grateful for that." Lily paused, taking a deep breath to steady herself. "I stand here today, a college graduate, because of all of you, because you believed in me, supported me, and loved me. Our family may not look like others, but it's perfect in its own way. Thank you for being my anchor, my support, and my inspiration. I love you all so much." There wasn't a dry eye in the room as Lily finished speaking. One by one, they stood up to embrace her, words of love and pride flowing freely. As the night wore on and the celebration continued, Lily found a quiet moment to slip away to her room. She picked up her journal, the same one Sarah had given her years ago, now filled with years of thoughts and memories. She opened to a fresh page and began to write, "Dear Journal, today marks the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As I look back on the journey that brought me here, I am filled with an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I once thought that family was something you were born into, something defined by blood. But life has taught me that family is so much more. It's the people who stand by you, who lift you up when you fall, who celebrate your victories and comfort you in your defeats. It's the love that grows and expands, making room for new connections without diminishing the old. My family, Richard, Margaret, Sarah, David, they've shown me the true meaning of unconditional love. They've taught me that home isn't a place, it's a feeling. It's where you are safe, accepted, and loved for exactly who you are. As I step into the next phase of my life, I carry with me the lessons they've taught me, the resilience I learned from my early years, the compassion and generosity I learned from Richard and Margaret, the power of second chances I learned from Sarah, and the importance of choosing love every day that I learned from David. My blue rosary, now adorned with charms that mark significant moments in our family's journey, is a testament to where I've been. But it's also a reminder of the endless possibilities that lie ahead. Because with this family behind me, I know I can face any challenge, achieve any dream. I am Lily Hawthorne, daughter of Richard and Margaret, daughter of Sarah, daughter of David. I am a survivor, a scholar, a photographer, and above all, I am loved. As one chapter closes, another begins, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for our beautifully unconventional family. Lily closed her journal, a sense of peace and excitement washing over her. She picked up her camera, scrolling through the photos from the day, candid shots of her family laughing, hugging, celebrating together. Each image told a story of love, of belonging. of a family that had defied convention to create something beautiful and lasting. As she set the camera down, her eyes fell on the photograph that had started it all, the one of Sarah and Richard that had led her to their doorstep on that fateful New Year's Eve. She smiled, realizing how far they had all come since that night. Lily knew that whatever the future held, whatever challenges or joys lay ahead, she would face them with the unwavering support of her family. A family that had been forged through love, strengthened by challenges, and bound together by choice. And in that knowledge she found strength, hope, and the promise of a beautiful tomorrow.